Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot, we charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Hello everybody, welcome to EggChasers. It is the EggChasers Rugby podcast. The podcast about rugby doesn't take itself or the game too seriously. I'm JB, in the dungeon, here with Tim. Hello Tim.
Hello, and apologies for last week. Well, for my part of last week, apologies for that. For my part of it, which is that I was in Greece.
Well, of course, and apologies for our part of it.
Yes.
Of ignoring you in the waiting room for half an hour.
I was in the waiting room waiting to come on the podcast for half an hour, at which point I actually went, well, my phone had been died by that point, so I couldn't message. And at that point I went, do you know what? It's okay. They'll be fine. And I went back to the taverna.
We got an email. It wasn't fine. We got an email. Tim, come back. We don't want to listen to Premiership. We don't want to listen to Premiership. So I just told him to go and listen to something else.
Well, we get lots of emails saying lots of lovely things, and I enjoyed the pod anyway.
Who on earth listens to our podcast and think there's too much Premiership on this?
I enjoyed the pod.
If we don't cover every game in great detail, we get emails saying,
exactly.
You've not covered every game in great detail. If we cover every game in great detail.
I think the lesson there is you cannot possibly, nor should you ever try to please everybody.
Yes.
So actually, we have to do the URC in great detail every week. Yeah. Zebra versus Dragons every single week.
Although I will just say I could quite happily go down another Sam Stewart rabbit hole and defend my position that he was not languishing in the Newcastle squad, but we don't need to go there.
No.
Because we've got some great games to talk about. We've got
Sam Stewart's now an egg chaser legend alongside Miles Benjamin.
Yeah, we need to create a Sam Stewart. Sam Stewart, send us one of your shirts.
Yes,
and we'll put it next to Miles Benjamin.
A Bladen one. I want a Bladen one. One of the real ones.
I would like. Actually, that's what I think our mission should be. If we have because we've got a Tom Brady jersey.
Yep.
The obviously not the premier Tom Brady.
The actual Tom Brady.
Rather than the imposter who plays that American egg-shaped sport or played. Miles Benjamin, I want like a niche.
Got quite a funny story about Tom Brady. A little bit of a funny story. But his Twitter obviously was Tom Brady. And he got 60,000 followers, which is mad.
Yeah, it was Tom Brady 14, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Or Tom Brady 11, whichever it was.
Somebody had tweeted to him something like, wrong Tom Brady, but your missus is amazing or something, because he's got a picture of him in his... Which is incredible that he'd say that to Tom Brady, who's married to Giselle.
Or was married to Giselle.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And what number was Tom Brady? 15. So there's only one digit out.
As in the Tom Brady.
The Tom Brady.
I don't know, but Tom Brady was Tom Brady 14 on his Twitter.
Yeah, and I think the other Tom Brady's used 15. To wear 15.
Yeah, maybe, or 13 or something. Yeah.
So I think it might have only been a digit out. Anyway, we got some ace rugby to talk about this week,
and some rugby drama as well.
Yeah,
sackings at Exeter. We've got dismissals at Munster.
What's happened at Exeter? Oh yeah, the defence coach.
12. Brady Ward, number 12 for the Patriots.
12. Okay,
there you go.
Fine. It was
close enough.
We've got local derbies and a scandal.
Ooh.
Internal EggChasers scandal.
Well,
we'll talk about
there's lots of scandal. I was going to say there's lots of scandals because Joe Marler was involved in supposedly a scandal, quote unquote. Certainly, if you look at social media or journalists' clickbait articles, it was a scandal. But that turns out to be his last involvement in international rugby, which is a shame as well.
Also, did you read the Danny Kerr article?
I did.
Brilliant stuff.
I didn't read that.
Brilliant stuff.
We might touch on that later.
We all have to. We have to.
Danny Kerr talking about Eddie Jones being Eddie Jones during his time. Lots.
Phil,
to
you have just reminded me. I was looking around in Chorlton today, and I didn't see anywhere to get a poppy, but I need to get a poppy. There wasn't any in the supermarkets today. I looked when I was in there, but now it's November. I must get my poppy. Fair play to you for having yours on, even for the podcast.
A week and a day to wear it.
An audio podcast, and Phil has come to the pod with his poppy on. I love it.
Absolutely.
Right.
Where to start then?
Well, I just start quickly by saying contact eggchasers@gmail.com is where you can email in.
Yes.
Find us, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and get more content at patreon.com/eggchasers. You'll find JB on LinkedIn, you'll find Phil lurking, and you'll find me on YouTube. So you can always get more rugby and more of us. Stuff, things, more of us. Come on, Twickenham. It was bouncing.
The atmosphere for big parts of the game did seem good. Would you attribute any of that to the change where the ref mic is on?
Yes.
Because I think there was a couple of moments where that did play a big part in lifting the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It probably wasn't the biggest element. Maybe some of it was the hacker beforehand and maybe made spicier by Joe Marler's comments that you referred to. And just the occasion, the fact that it is the All Blacks versus England, one of the biggest matches in.
I was at the last
rugby.
game at Twickenham. I was at that Ireland match, and I hadn't heard Twickenham like that for a long time. And even in defeat, I got the impression from people that were there, and just from what came across on the TV, that it was bouncing, which is that's just good to see. Allianz, sorry, the Allianz was bouncing.
Yes, and I agree with that point. It is good to see. But it's another narrow loss.
And it's
one of many now.
Yeah. Well, 3 this year against New Zealand.
Yes.
There's 1 against France to finish the Six Nations.
Yeah.
And South Africa World Cup semi-final. There's 5 big ones within the last year.
Yes. And add to that a narrowish defeat, but a fairly handsome defeat to Scotland in the Six Nations as well. And you combine that with the wins that they've had this year. We'll park Japan and ignore that because it was a bit of a hammering on the summer tour, bit of a mismatch. But they only beat Wales by, I think it was 2 points, and it was a poor Wales team. They beat Italy by maybe 3 or 4 points, and they beat France by 1 or 2 points. So in all of the games, putting that Japan game to one side, they've been close games, but far more frequently coming out on the losing side.
And when they have come out on the losing side, it's from winning positions.
Yes, quite.
In pretty much in every case. And maybe less so that no. I think no, that's not true.
Yeah,
that's not true in most
cases.
Yeah,
and to add to that, I think this stat originated from Charlie Morgan. I'll give him credit because he's a good guy.
Morgonian drift.
That in the 3 games against the All Blacks, in the last half an hour of each game, England have only totaled 3 points across all 3. So that is 3 points across 90 minutes of rugby, but the final 30 in every game.
Right.
So that is, it's not a good way to finish. You always want to be finishing stronger. Some of that could be attributable to relative fitness. All teams are fit, but some are fitter than others. Some of it could be attributable to relative strength and weakness of benches.
But what's interesting is that's also been an issue for New Zealand
in this year. Right. So historically, it was never
not historically, but that's why it's been
this year in the Rugby Championship.
This year in the Rugby Championship, that was a factor. Whereas New Zealand finished strongly, 10 points in the last 14 minutes to win the game. And I'm just piecing those two things together, and correlation doesn't equal causation. But you're saying, as you say, England have consistently had that issue. New Zealand have had an issue in the final stages until they've played England, when actually they finished stronger. So does that compound the thought that England have an issue in the closing stages of matches? And if that is the case, can I just suggest that it's the defensive energy that saps from the way that they defend?
Yeah. I think you're onto something here, Tim. So when I watched this game, I have no stats about this. This is just what I saw. I saw a team, particularly in the first, 20 minutes, who looked a lot like South Africa in defence, which is not a surprise because of Felix Jones and the way that they run that defence. I was blown away by the physicality. Absolutely blown away. I think that this is actually a universal problem for all teams. My theory on this is Do you know when you see a Premiership manager, as in football manager, go into a club and the first thing he says, oh, the players aren't fit? Which, of course, is utter nonsense.
They all say that.
Hire Eddie Jones and he'll get you 30% fitter in a couple of weeks.
Well, so I think you used to be able to make teams fitter than other teams at the top level. I think Warren Gatland showed this with Wales and taking them to these hellish camps in the Alps, and that I think that's how Warren Gatland probably won a lot of games. Lots of fitness, lots of doing basic things very, very well.
So
over and over again.
Just on that point, I actually think it's the basic things and the cohesion of doing basic things well as a unit that is more important than the fitness.
That comes to my second point, right? So I think actually the fitness thing is done. If you can get your team fitter, it'll be like 5%. It won't even be that.
Not even that.
I just don't think it's going to make a difference. I think that these teams are now so fit, and so what do? Well, you can't come out slow, that's for sure. You can't save yourself. And I think England's style of play, South Africa's style of play... Remember, we've just said England have lost X amount of games by a close margin. South Africa have won X amount of games by a close margin. So I think that you can just see this pattern, can't you, of incredibly physical teams, and they do fade, and it's going to be tighter, particularly in top games. I just think, well, okay, there you go. At least England are on the right kind of path. The other thing which I thought is everybody talks about skills under pressure. Skills under pressure, skills under fatigue. To come to the point you just made, Phil, what about concentration under fatigue? I think actually that this is a bigger thing. So England's opening 2 tries against them, or New Zealand's 2 tries, to put it better, were just mental lapses more than anything else. And I think that's going to be the difference. You can choose skills under fatigue, you can choose decision-making under fatigue. As long as one of those things is absolutely spot on, you will win. But it's up to you to decide which. Because I don't think you can do both. I don't think there's enough time.
The other element I would add, and this is something that New Zealand have always been very good at, but particularly when you defend the way England defend, which for the most part is effective and actually contain New Zealand to 24 points, which I would say is pretty good. But transition, because New Zealand, when they get turnover ball, I mean, they should have scored from one of those when Satiti made that break through the middle and Tupuvai had dick fingers. That was just pure transition. And I think when you look back at Talea's second try, it was the same. It was that
one in the corner. Oh, his first try.
Oh, his first try. Sorry,
yeah. But the second try of the game.
Yes, correct. And so those moments where you're attacking and then we have to get our defensive shape, and that's both fatigue, organisation, a consequence of the unstructured, wild, probably a better word.
I think they're much England better defend. Transitioning one way than the other.
Yeah.
So they're quite good with the positive transition, which is defence into attack, but attack into defence is somewhat problematic.
Yeah.
And it is hard. It's mentally hard, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's hard when they've learnt a new defensive system under Felix Jones that is being changed again, presumably, or at least tweaked again. Yeah. And you saw in those first 2 tries, Talea's first try and the Will Jordan try, where Ellis Genge was isolated for both of those, and Ellis Genge ended up kind of missing the tackle. And I would put part of those misses on Ellis Genge, but I would also, in both cases, put part of it on the people inside him not recognising the risk of a prop being isolated once on the wing against maybe the fastest man on the field, and the other time in the middle of the field, but with Beauden Barrett and Will Jordan opposite him with space either side.
On the Will Jordan one, I mean it's Jordan and Barrett against Ellis Genge with 10 metres to play with. It's a lamb to the slaughter, but Genge probably shouldn't have moved as far away from the breakdown as he did in that guard position.
I think so. He's the one who misses the tackle. What should have happened when I watched both incidents again several times, I think that George Martin, particularly on the second one, on the Will Jordan try, George Martin, he stayed on the open side. He stayed guard on the open side. He or someone else should have come across, folded in, because it was Genge and maybe Faye were both so out wide with line up. It was a total a total mismatch. So Genge was given no chance. Partly his fault, but also Martin on the inside.
Yeah.
But I don't. Those are the kind of thing that you would kind of expect in a tweaked defensive structure or learning a new defensive structure, whichever we're going to describe it as. It's not unusual playing the best team in the world with multiple second best team.
Maybe
one
third.
of the best.
One
yeah,
a good team.
One of the top 5 teams in the world.
Yeah.
One of the best teams in the world with outrageous attacking abilities. What I did like was the point you made before, JB, on the physicality. There was some monstrous, and from both sides,
awesome.
From both sides, monstrous hits.
Yeah. And the one that stood out for me, and it made me think...
Rugby's a non-contact sport, remember?
Oh, yeah. Imagine these guys.
Sorry, not in non-contact. Evasion. It's an evasion sport.
With the occasional bit of contact. Incorrect.
No, it's a collision sport, and we love it.
Goodness me. Well, I want to talk about that again later in terms of how do we get lads to play rugby, because, I mean, that is magnificent to watch. But in terms of the contact stuff, or the physicality stuff, it did make me think about in terms of the Premiership. I was watching Chandler Cunningham South, who was born for international rugby at this point. I mean, he is just
he's a test match animal.
Yeah. I mean, I'm always sceptical about this. I think he is. But then he's not.
Borthwick, just on that, Borthwick in his post-match test conference got asked about Cunningham South and Fairway both, so and obviously flowing with praise for both of them. And he described them as not test match animals, but test match players, which I knew he was trying hard not to use the Eddie Jones phrase.
Yeah. They just are, aren't they? Yeah. And they are the sort of player that just Harlequins don't really need. Like, that Cunningham himself plays for Harlequins.
Well, half the time they don't want.
Yeah,
because they leave him on the bench or leave him out.
I mean, we just don't need this amount of monumental firepower. We just don't need it. We'll leave it for later.
Too much. It's irresponsible.
Yeah, we'll use it for Europe, and that's when he comes alive. Like he's magnificent. I don't understand why we don't talk about him. Like we spoke about Mario Itoje when he first came on the scene, because he makes so much more of an impact. Just the things he does, the highlight reels, everything.
In the Six Nations, I think he was. So his year has gone Six Nations, bench, and then he started the games against New Zealand, but he would only play 45, 50 minutes, and yesterday was the most rugby he's played at that level. I think he played 66 minutes, and he looked ace. So I think he is growing, and I think that's probably why he's not being spoken about in those terms.
I think
but he will be now.
So, and I would say as well, because it's interesting seeing him opposite Wallace Satiti, who's only 6 months older than he is, probably less well known, certainly around these parts, certainly in the Premiership parts, who had a superb game as well. He was.
Well, they had different games, didn't they?
Well, and that's kind of my point. Yeah, I think Cunningham South is so physical. He's so good in the close quarters physicality stuff, whereas Satiti is a bit more broken field runner, a bit more offloady, a bit more that type of skill set, and they've both got their place.
Yeah,
I'd say Cunningham South is sort of archetypal 6, and Satiti is more of a kind of RD8.
Yeah, something like that.
He's a bit bigger than RD.
He's closer to RD. Yeah, he is. He's like an RD type, isn't he? Whereas Cunningham South is, I don't know.
Bearing in mind that Cunningham South would have been eligible to play for New Zealand. That like RD at 7, Satiti at 8, and Cunningham South at 6.
I'm not even sure they play him. I think he's such a unique talent.
They play him because he fulfills that classic. This is what I'm saying. Out of the New Zealand back row, I was watching it going. Sam Kane's not long for this world on an international pitch, because RD should be 7 and Satiti should be 8, and they should get a classic 6 like Jerry Collins or Jerome Kano, or when he comes back next year, what's his face that was there at the World Cup, Frizzell.
Oh yeah. See, I'm not sure they play him as well, and I'm not sure he gets to that point, because I'm not sure his softer side skills are currently good enough.
I don't think he has any, does he?
But he is a sledgehammer.
He catches like he catches like he tackles.
So yeah, that's why I think he's not. And it is interesting, because someone else who, like Cunningham South, was eligible for 2 Nations in Hoskins Sototu, who is a superb player, and probably has more of the softer skills than Cunningham South.
And as you say, because Satiti was under the radar before this year, and you did wonder as has Razor just spelt it wrong, or the secretary just
meant
to write Satotu and
are they
wrote
related?
Satiti?
Have I got this? It was it Satotu or Satiti? Which one was it?
Well, Satiti was in the. He didn't even start this season in the Chiefs' full squad. He was in the.
Yeah, he was in the
like
North
grade.
Harbour NPC. He was playing for.
Yeah, and he was part of the Chiefs' age grade setup, and now he's not just starting, but absolutely dominating. Looking, he's man of the match.
Similar story to, in terms of meteoric rise, to Emmanuel Faye-Waboso. And I think the two of them will be nominees for the Breakthrough Player of the Year in a couple of weeks.
It's
there
hard to
are
look
a handful
past
of England players that I just look at now and think, you're the real deal. I think
George Martin.
George Martin is absolutely one of those. He's an international player. That's the end of that.
Yeah.
Ollie Lawrence, I think, just is very, very good. These guys seem to get better.
Faye-Waboso and Freeman.
More.
Definitely Faye-Waboso.
Definitely Faye-Waboso.
You don't know?
No, I don't know.
Oh, he just makes things happen.
Yeah, he does, actually.
He's so explosive.
He was the most exciting player going forward for
He's
England.
carrying. His contact meters are
You're
amazing.
right, actually. I'm just trying to pick holes in his game. Like I can't really say. Yeah, I don't know. He is so raw. He's so raw.
Yeah.
But
so
it's the things like catching balls in the air, opposed balls in the air. That's really hard. The reason I say that is because I like my wingers to be out and out, kick chase, boring, Will Muir type people, and he's not that. He's definitely not that.
No, he can
Mind
do
you,
that.
Will Muir's not boring, for the record. Will Muir's extremely exciting. He just does the kick chasing.
He's a lovely player.
So yeah, I'd like two Will Muirs. That's what I'd like. But Freeman is class.
Just to Phil's point on New Zealand for a second, I think you can look back at that game and say, yeah, they scored 3 tries to 1, and so on that basis, you can sort of go, oh well, they deserve to win. It was individual brilliance.
Or individual errors, whichever way you look at it.
Or conversely, England errors.
A combination of the two.
Combination of the two. It wasn't. There was never sustained pressure, except for towards the end when they were getting the penalties and the scrum was on top.
Yeah, the scrum is a point. So that is a great point. The place where England need a complete overhaul are all 6 front rowers, but they just don't have them. All 6 can go, as far as I'm concerned.
I keep your 2 hookers. I would keep Genge and Baxter. The place that England have needed it for so long and still need it, and it's still not happening, is tight head.
Yeah.
Well, Asher Opoku for Jaws just come into the squad. Now, Sale play him at tight head, but he's replacing Joe Marler in the squad.
He is.
So
he plays England. He plays loose head at England under 20.
But he only plays loose head at England under 20s because they had Fasogbon and the other chap who's a young Quins player. I can't remember who was backing him up. So they just wanted to get the best players on the pitch.
The All Black scrum towards the end of the game was ridiculously
Tunga, Fassi and Tosi. But I think Tuipulotu had... Right, let's talk about the... Right, yeah, it's hard to navigate this game. Okay, well, I want to start here because this is the narrative coming out of this. I'm just wondering what they're saying in... Phil's got the rugby paper there. By any chance, is the articles in that paper? Because certainly what's being written a lot and said a lot is, what was Borthwick doing taking Smith off? How could he have done that? That lost them the game.
I've seen that narrative, not in the rugby paper.
Stuart Barnes and many other people.
Yeah, and it is easy to make it, with hindsight, make the facts fit that narrative, and I do have some sympathy for that because of how well Marcus Smith was playing, and subsequently, not particularly how badly George Ford played, but he missed 2 important shots a goal at the end. But I don't actually mind the decision at all because George Ford historically he's such an experienced player. He's been phenomenal in those kind of situations. Like look back at his performance where he not quite literally single-handedly beat Argentina, but he was by far the best player and the most important player on the pitch in the World Cup only 12 months ago. So I have some sympathy for it, but I just don't think it's right. I don't think
you need a change of pace, guy, do you? That's the thing. I mean, he is a little bit more steady than Mark Smith.
More so than Marcus Smith, yeah.
But why do you need to change the pace? Why do you need him on the field? I wouldn't have put him on the field. But I don't hate the decision to put him on the field.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the reason they lost.
Yes. That's where I am. Because I would have. I thought Mark Smith was playing so well that there was no reason to change him. He was. It's not like he was gassed. He'd put in some great tackles. He'd made good meters with ball in hand, particularly ahead of the Faye Weboso try, which he made the most meters with ball in hand. But he comfortably could have done the last 20 minutes of that game.
A bench that makes maximum impact, and you want to use all your bench. That's what, because we've just spoken, haven't we, about how physical it is, how taxing the game is. So you do need that injection of something. You need fly half cover. So you've got Furbank. That's your fly half cover.
And you've also got Henry Slade. If you're down to your third fly half in a game, it's highly unlikely, or it will only be for a few minutes. Henry Slade is more than adequate to do that.
I would love England to go with, and I'm not saying this player, but you'll take my point. Someone like a Will Butt or another Ollie Lawrence or someone like that who comes on and makes a big physical difference, like a Porter. I know he's retired now. Someone like that. I don't. You understand the scrum half, because scrum halves run miles and miles and miles. And actually, why did George Ford miss that drop goal? I don't think the pass from Randall was good at all.
It was.
It's an awful pass. But you do need a second scrum half because they run and run and run. So great. What is the impact? What is the game-changing ability from your back? You need something. If you're going to start a fly half, you got to assume he's going to be your best fly half. You probably want to be with him for the rest of the game. So that would be my criticism of it. Not the fact that George Ford came on, the fact that the bench weren't.
Two
didn't
half
have
backs.
an impact.
Yeah, two half backs on the bench.
You would argue of all the positions, everyone is wrecked after a game of international rugby, but the fly half should be the least wrecked.
Well, yeah, maybe it was when we were talking before about the how hard it is to be that physical, and England's drop off and other teams drop off over the last 20 minutes. Maybe Borthwick was preempting that
with the 6-2 split.
Yeah. Preempt it from both a forward perspective with a 6-2 split, but also he wants someone who can just control the game and see it out, hoping that he's ahead, which he was, but hoping he could sit out with a half-back. So I can kind of see the logic.
And they got themselves 8 points up.
But I would...
It was all going to plan.
It didn't work out well in this situation. And I would prefer someone who does something, so brings that energy, either because of massive size, so like a big ball carrying centre or winger type, or just someone who's explosive.
Yeah, or Chris Harris or Locarno, someone who shuts things down. Just make sure your defence is extra solid, something like that. If you want to control the game, maybe a Van Portfleet so we can kick it about. But I just don't think 10 is the right person to carry.
Big, solid defence, maybe a centre, Sam Burgess.
Yeah,
Perfect.
Now you're talking. Let's get another one of him.
And versatility, can play multiple positions.
Yeah. So I've got a couple of things that I would say about this is... Firstly, you kind of said it. You sort of said, Ford's more your steady kind of guy. This is a narrative which seems to have appeared very recently, and I don't get it. It was about a year ago, during the World Cup, when Owen Farrell was getting all sorts of stick, and people were going, we need to play Ford. He's the more attacking player.
He is more attacking than Owen Farrell, I'll give him that.
Right. So there's that. I don't understand this strange thing. Now Farrell is retired, it's almost like someone has to fill this northern, boring, scapegoat-shaped hole.
Okay.
And now we're going to make Ford... I wonder if him being northern might have something to do with it. I mean, I don't... That's ridiculous.
I think what that actually means is, who is your experienced guy?
Yeah.
Like, where is the experience? Do they know what to do? But why bother playing? I mean, if you're going to do it that way, keep Marcus Smith on the bench.
Yeah, I'm sympathetic to that idea, which is actually, so just to that point about Ford is a brilliant attacking player.
He is, yeah.
England have looked probably at their best as an attacking force against France and Ireland in the Six Nations. Ford was 10.
Yeah, I don't think Ford's more attacking, less attacking, more defensive.
No, so I just wanted to address that thing that it's like, oh no, he's steady. I'll address the second thing, which is a lot of people are saying, he's not part of the future. He's going to be 34 at the next World Cup. Yeah,
that's the future. And that's fine.
That's absolutely spot on.
With that.
Thank you very much. I'm perfectly fine with that. The other thing is, I'll just throw a few different counterfactuals in there which address this issue. I agree with everything you said. I don't think there was a necessity to change Smith. But here's a counterfactual. Ford hits the drop goal or the penalty, And Steve Borthwick is hailed as managing his bench
perfectly
because he's got the finisher. There's one counterfactual scenario.
100%.
Here's the second counterfactual. He doesn't bring Ford on, and Smith shanks another drop goal, which he completely butchered. A couple of drop goals earlier. And had he done that, then Borthwick would have got a load of crap for not bringing on Ford, who's a drop goal specialist, and would have nailed that kick.
You've got to ignore anyone that talks about kicks. It's like, oh, but he missed because of the kick. That just happens.
And a third one had some people going, Ford's not the future. Finn Smith's in great form. He would have done it. Finn Smith misses the kick. And then, what are you doing putting a kid on? You've got George Ford, all that experience. Yeah. So it's just, I haven't got any time for this stuff. I think the most important point was there a necessity to change Ford? I think a lot of people have said the same about Randall and Spencer. Randall wasn't great when he came on, but as you've said, scrum halves run themselves into the ground. And it's almost impossible to play 80 minutes.
Yeah, you've got to have another scrum half.
Yeah. I think the biggest change was on 40, was it 52 minutes, the whole front row came on, and everything, from my mind, actually they looked quite good for a little while then, but
the scrum towards the end fell
apart. And let's talk about that last moment, because there was a litany of errors in that final play that was so naive and had nothing to do with George Ford's kick. And in fact, George Ford's kick were the consequences of all of these errors. First and foremost, you have a scrum 5 metres out. Could you ask for a better position to just knock a drop goal straight over?
Nope.
Yep.
And it's unforgivable that the scrum messed it up.
Fell apart.
Again. They got absolutely mullered. But then you compound the error, because, we've played at, Phil's played level 2, 3, we've played up and down levels, vets games. What should you do? What's the automatic drill when the ball's been hooked and your scrum's getting squeezed and about to get
in and out?
Yeah, in and out. But who takes it out?
8.
The number 8 deals with it.
Yep,
Don Brandt left it for Randall, and then he shipped it terribly back to the 22, and they're out there. And then there was about 3. Sorry, I realise I'm talking a lot. Then there was about 3 rucks. 2 of them definitely were perfectly good. Front foot set, blockers in, forward back, use it. Then they gave the pass to Ford on the worst of the options to do it.
Yeah.
And then Randall's pass was loopy, high.
It was a
to the side. He had to
the side.
From the side to bring it back in.
It was just error.
Yes.
I completely agree with all of that. But on the whole, I'd say England have got... I wouldn't be bothered about this. I think it's not like the nadir of Eddie Jones, where you just look at them and think that you're hopeless. They're all hopeless. This is a pretty good effort. I think the front row needs tightening up. They need someone to contribute in the front row. Contributors. They're not contributing nearly enough, including the captain. But other than that, I'll tell you the other one who had a poor game by his own standards was Ben Earl. He was all action, but he didn't make...
I don't know.
He didn't do the damage that I want him to do.
He made another error, like he did against France, which cost England the game. I'm not saying this cost...
the penalty.
No, because I don't like the single point of failure argument. Ben Earl was not to blame for England losing in France. He did against France. He did a load of great things in that game, but he gave away a penalty, no arms tackle. Much like, people used to get on to Owen Farrell. Is there a technique issue? Maybe there's a little technique thing that Ben Earl can tweak.
He did, didn't he?
That was a big pivotal moment in the game.
It was a no arms tackle.
It was a no arms tackle
at the shins.
Yeah.
I think you shouldn't. If you tackle beneath the knee, no arms needed. Why? Why? What a stupid law.
I kind of, from a safety perspective, I kind of agree.
Yeah.
The only downside is was he on the knee? Was he above the knee? Was he below the knee?
In the shin knee area.
Which is it, the shin or the knee?
Well, speaking of that, actually, there's a picture. Oh, where is it? There's a picture in here somewhere of Wallace Satiti about to tackle someone, and he's taken a knee. There he is, about to tackle Cunningham South.
Oh.
Yeah, he's on one knee.
Yellow card, that is.
Yeah.
Yellow card is off.
Yellow card, you can see there. Satiti clearly on one knee, about to tackle, so I'm certain there will be a retrospective ban for that.
I'm not whinging about refereeing decisions because it doesn't matter, but there was a few things Gardner missed. But it was loose. It was a great game, and you've got to credit him for that.
Yeah, there was a few things he missed. Really cannot complain about the referee when at one point I think England were 9-2 up in penalty count in England's favour. I did think he was a bit loose for both teams at the ruck, but it's for both teams. He was consistent, and I've got no problem with him at all. Overall,
no, not at all.
I thought the Anton Linnett-Brown incident at the end was a bit bonkers, where he got 2 yellow cards, but the 2 yellow cards can't be added up to a red because the second one wouldn't have happened because the play should have stopped after the first one. Okay, it doesn't matter because there's only 2 minutes left, so fine, just play on, I guess.
Yeah, just play on. Exactly right. I don't know what else to add to this, really, other than I just like how England are constituted. I would like to see Ted Hill have a run out, but I don't know.
He's not in the squad anymore. He's been released. He's been released and replaced with Charlie Ewells
and Asher
Poker for yours.
I mean, I can't get excited about that one. No. Charlie Ewells is having a great season, to be fair to him. So
he is, but I want to see Ted Hill.
I want to see Ted Hill.
2 other things from me. I thought we mentioned quite a few players who played well. I thought Mario Itoje was excellent.
He was great.
He was.
I thought that Tuipulotu, when he came on, made a big difference for the All Blacks. And Tupu Vai'i is a very good player. He didn't have a great game.
No, he didn't have a good game.
And he'd probably admit that. The other thing I did want to talk about, I don't want to go too long on this, but I did feel that England's attack was the frustrating bit.
Yeah.
New Zealand scored 3 tries from their individual brilliance exploiting mistakes, defensive structure mistakes.
What was it, England? 5 pens and 1 breakaway interception try.
Correct. England's only try came from an intercept that was finished. It still had to be finished, but the attack. There was a few times where from set pieces, particularly lineouts, because England's lineout operated very well.
Very well. There's some very slick movement in that.
There was stats here. England 100% lineout, 12 successful lineouts. New Zealand 75%.
Their 5-man driving lineout looked really, really slick.
So England lineout superb, but the attack where there just wasn't the cohesion between Slade and Lawrence and Smith and Furback coming in and the wingers coming off, and you could see what they were trying to do, but it just didn't work very well. Now I just want to see more attacking. England's
attack looked at its best when it was and Smith had a really good game. This is not a knock on him, and having already said there was no need to have brought him off. And hindsight's 20/20, isn't it? So I don't blame the decision to bring Ford on, but there was anyway. But England looked best as an attacking force when Smith had nothing to do with it. The forwards were England's attack. Their tip passes and their forward shapes. That's when England actually dented the line and looked good. But there was kind of nothing really from the backs.
My guess on England is we will see a gradual increase in their attacking effectiveness, and I think it'll all come from line out. Majority will come from line out. Don't think there's any secret what Steve Borthwick likes to prioritise. Set piece, line out, tick.
Line out, yeah.
I think the ruck was pretty good. Tick.
Yeah.
Scrum.
So the scrum was good for 60 minutes.
Not good enough, I don't think. He needs to be dominant. Really.
I wonder, how much do you think, again, that, because Dan Cole we've seen in other games go, he's the rock, he's the kind of guy that's the go-to, he'll sort things out. How much do you think, when you piece that together, it might not even be personnel, because a lot of people are going, but Baxter, maybe he's not good enough after all. I did think we missed a Joe Marler.
Yep.
But then it's easy to say that maybe the same thing would happen to Joe Marler. I don't know. There's a lot of different factors, but a scrum is an 8-man effort, and how much is the intensity of what England try and do with that defensive thing?
On 2 lads who are basically brand new to the international game, plus Dan Cole, who might be past the international game. That to me doesn't sound like a great replacement for him.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like, you need something. Finn Baxter's fine. I would keep him about because I think you do need to develop in the international game. Theo Dan, I might keep him about, but I'm not entirely certain. I think I probably would. I mean, they just don't have the options, do they? They just don't have the options. I'm not sure what I would do different other than whinge about it.
They do have the options at Lucid and hooker, because you could bring Luke Carandicki in.
Beno Obano.
Beno Obano can come in.
Obano, yeah, that's not
Lucid.
I am surprised that Opoku Fajor, who plays club rugby at Tighthead, has come in to replace Joe Marler and not Beno Obano.
Just get the kids in, yeah?
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd one.
That's a good point.
It's an odd one.
Because Beno Obano he's such a good player.
And absolutely
very
leathered the sales scrum.
Yeah, he's having a great season as well.
Yeah.
So he must be thinking, what more do I have to do?
Yeah. I wonder if Trevor Davidson will get some rugby.
Trevor Davidson. Get me Trevor Davidson. Yeah, I'd have that.
Will Stewart actually did better.
He's not an international player. I like him, but he's not an international player.
I think England scrum, I don't know much about these things, but I thought England scrum, it won at least a couple of penalties and was very solid for the rest of the first 60 minutes. It completely fell apart in the last 10.
I wonder if... Martin stayed on. I was going to say scrummaging, because Tuipulotu, I know it's just... props always get the headline on the scrummaging, but Tuipulotu, when he came on, things seemed to start getting better. Anyway, I don't know. So many variables.
Just on New Zealand's attacking game, though, did you think that was good? Because I wasn't that...
No. It was individual moments of brilliance. Like Mark Talleyr's finishing is ridiculous.
It is, but I tell you what I don't like about him is when he's running moves, he always has his hips sort of squared off to the touchline. Does that make sense? So you kind of know what he's going to do. You look at his hips, he's like, oh, he's running that way. He's running that way for some reason. He never looks dangerous coming into the line. And when he does come into the line, usually it doesn't go overly well for New Zealand.
He's better on the right wing, I think.
Yeah, he's better on the wing, finishing. He's great at that.
Had he been on the right wing in the World Cup, New Zealand win the World Cup. Yeah. Because he did you can tell he's a right winger because that it was Rico Ioane. So it was Rico Ioane should know. I was thinking that attempted try in the left-hand corner that Curtly Aronson managed to tackle. I thought that was Talleyrand in my head for a second. And it was Ioane was holding it in the right arm when he should have been holding it in the left hand.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got it wrong.
Yeah. So, the All Blacks, for everyone saying that they're a great attacking force, I imagine they'll be saying that again. I didn't rate them particularly in open play.
No.
They didn't have a superb game. No. I thought the two centres, Barrett and Rico, were kept pretty quiet.
Very quiet.
Bowden didn't do very much. There was the chalked off try.
Do you think the game
rightly chalked off?
Do you think the game is somewhat passing by players of that standard? So, they are so good. I honestly think those two lads are the most physically and talented, the most gifted centre partnership maybe the world's ever seen. I really they do absolutely everything. They're both enormous.
Massive. Yeah.
And one of them is a super athlete. The other one has got great athleticism, but he's got incredible skills. But they just don't seem to do what they need to do. They don't seem to take over games. If you had Championship Manager and you had those two guys, and you just win everything, wouldn't you?
You'd expect to win 5-0 every single game.
By the way, 5-0 in goals, right?
Yeah.
This isn't like
one try to
not
unconverted try.
Yeah,
Nope.
But I don't know what it is about them. They just don't seem to have the effect on the game. I don't know if it's they can't open up space for them. I don't know if the game has passed them by, and actually it's all about just heavy traffic runners. I don't know what it is.
And also, you don't know how much, because again, you go, and they were Nonu and Conrad Smith. Nonu and Conrad Smith is one of the most amazing centre pairings ever. Equally, they were playing outside Dan Carter and Aaron Smith.
Yeah.
And in front of a pretty gnarly pack.
Yeah. I wonder if the game is just... I wonder if space is just even less than what it was. And therefore, you super, super talented guys. I mean, if you just swap Conrad Smith and Nonu and you bring them into this team now and put these other two into that team, I think they are miles better. Miles better.
Yeah,
probably.
And I don't know why that is.
Well, the game is changing, and when I was watching that game, so there's a lot of box kicking and a lot of talking about the box kicking because of the I don't even know if it's a law variation or a law trial, but it's probably not even that. The initiative to take the guard runners away and the defensive guard runners. There was also, particularly early on, a lot of crossfield kick, the classic kick pass that New Zealand have been doing for years to great effect. England have done more recently.
When you watch the top 14, it's all teams doing.
Is it?
Well, that's all they do,
and it's becoming ubiquitous. It's becoming too common, and it just means everyone's expecting it all of the time.
But
so it's
so I call these like
effective.
shaping plays. So your mauls, your crossfield kicks are all shaping plays. That you do them not to do them, but to affect the next play. So you should always do your crossfield kicks early, so people are on guard that crossfield kicks are coming, and then you spread the defence, and then you can play. Same way, you always maul early because you want to keep the line out static in place. So next time you can come off the top. So I think you've got to shape it early with these crossfield kicks and with these mauls in order to play the next thing.
And I do get that, but I guess the crossfield kick has gone from a tool that was used relatively little and was highly successful to one that's perhaps it's a hand that is being overplayed and is becoming less successful as a consequence. Yeah, but maybe that is to create more successes elsewhere.
Yeah, and it's probably part of the same phenomenon, which means that very talented ball-playing centres are not quite so good. This is them trying to find space. They need to manufacture space in every single way. I actually think the Saracens' way of kicking the ball from so many different places would be very beneficial to England. Maybe you whip it out wide to do that sort of L kick. They seem to kick from every single position. That's what I'd be looking at.
Well, England have got a team that are set up to do that with Spencer and Smith. Some of Smith's kicks were excellent. And then Slade and Furbank are both superb.
Didn't really see them. We didn't really see them kick.
No, but we didn't. We didn't see it. The team's set up to be able to do it. They just didn't do it in this game.
Yeah. And what's his name can kick very well. Tommy Freeman. His little chip and chases are fantastic. So I think that's probably another area which they should do more and more of, is more kicking, please. Just on the flip side, I suppose it's important to sort of credit, while a lot of people have been talking about England's replacements and stuff, New Zealand with Damien McKenzie on the bench, who not only kind of made things happen when he came on, nailed his kick.
Yeah. Well, so there was 2 kicks from the touchline. Both of Talia's tries were scored right out in the corner. Bowden Barrett kicked one. Early on in the game with less pressure, McKenzie kicked the other with massive pressure. And ultimately, they don't get those 2. They don't win.
Yeah. And I think that was basically the difference. England's starting 15 was better than New Zealand's. New Zealand's bench was better than England's.
With the exception of Anton Linnett-Brown.
With the exception of Anton Linnett-Brown and possibly Ben Curry, who was quite good when he came on.
Ben Curry was good. But yeah, other than that, the England's bench was a bit anonymous, wasn't it?
What do you think? And one thing I've noticed, and this is sort of a broader, as Bongi and Banambi put it in the Chasing the Sun series, before the England game, he talked about, in the semi-final England game, in the build-up to that, he was doing his bit to camera, and he talked about England's plastic energy.
Ooh, I like that.
By which he meant, that's the phrase he used, plastic energy, which is the whooping and hollering when someone knocks the ball on. Ben Earl classic. Chandler Canning himself did it after a tackle. Ben Curry did it after a turnover. England do it. Nick Ezekwe, who'd just come on, did it when New Zealand knocked on.
I do. I'm a bit conflicted because as an England fan, I do quite like seeing it.
Yeah, I love it.
But I think the phrase plastic energy describes it perfectly. It's such a good insult.
Yeah, I love it. That's great. You got to remember, rugby has a little bit of the American quarterback about it. So even though a lot of the lads don't go to private school, most of them do go to private school. And what private schools are excellent at is making lads pretend that there's something that they're not. Right, so that they're not intrinsically better or anything, but private schools just have this ability to do that, and rugby has this ability also to make lads pretend to be a certain way. And you see it most prevalently, when the drafted quarterback is talking like a 45-year-old CEO. Like, he's not a 45-year-old CEO. You know that he loves his women and his drink and, to have a good time. But he's talking about, it's all just about the team. It's all just about the team. And, I don't like to talk about me, just what I can do for everyone else. I want to serve. Shut up. Right? And I think this is kind of what you see with England. Like, we're just going to buy into it. We're going to buy into it. We're going to be like really positive. And the plastic energy completely disappears when they get punched in the face. As soon as it meets contact, as soon as it starts going backwards, that's when plastic energy just disappears.
Well, the way that Bongi and Banambi talked about it in that Chasing the Sun series, he used the phrase, which, as you say, it's a great phrase.
It's such a good insult
because it just shows it can be very superficial. I mean, it's very annoying when they're on the front foot.
He said, I can't remember exactly what he said, but basically his point was the front row would look at each other when South Africa knocked it on and England have won a scrum. And then they go, Ben Irwin and Maro Itoje. And Bongi Mbonambi's like, right, okay. All right, we'll show you.
Got to say, though.
Wait, it fired them up is the point.
If you get it right, because I think England just get it wrong, and I think the reason is I just don't think they're an intimidating bunch. I mean, they are physically intimidating, right? Yeah. But the first time I encountered enthusiasm was as rugby league training with some team in Warrington. I thought these guys are fucking terrifying. Like, there's something different about, because rugby league talk about enthusiasm all the time, but they leather you. Like, I can't really put my finger on it. Feels legitimate. Where I don't know why the England one doesn't feel legitimate. Well, it doesn't.
Here's my thought on that: is that so I coach the university team, and I say regularly, build your own atmosphere, because you're out on a pitch. You're out on a pitch where there's no one and it's silent. So every opportunity you've got, I encourage every opportunity you get to give someone a little arse tap, to give it a whoop, to G each other up, do it. But that's because there is no one else there.
I say it's about scrimmaging, right? So scrimmaging, it really annoys me when people don't do this, right? That is it. Your time to get excited, and it really. The principle of normal face comes into play here. Normal face is, no matter how bad it's going, get your normal face on. You can't show that you don't want to scrimmage. You've got to run to these scrums. And that is fake energy. But as long as you can keep it going when you're getting battered, then it's not fake, then it becomes legitimate. It's kind of like, how do you become a nice person? You pretend to be a nice person, right? You've got to carry on pretending. I was trying to teach the lads this when we were smashing into malls. Like, the first few were just pathetic. It's like, how do you smash into a mall? You go low. Like, no, you've got to want to do it, right? The first thing is you've got to want to do it. So can you all pretend you want to smash malls? And if you carry on pretending hard enough, you will eventually start smashing malls. So it is synthetic and it is manufactured, but if you do it, it's not. And I think Bongi Mbonambi is pointing out that England say all these things, but when their tails go down, they really go down. That's the difference. You've got to do it when you're getting battered.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So whoop and holler. So that was the irony of that, and probably illustrated it brilliantly. George Ford hits the post with his kick. Tuipulotu knocks it on.
Should that be 4 points though? We not discussed this. If it hits the post, you get 4 points.
Yeah, I agree.
It's harder.
Yeah. Like, but you got to declare it.
Oh yes, nice.
So
right,
what's choice? 4 points, please. Oh shit!
Crossbar
or
yeah, crossbar
or
post,
sticks.
Crossbar or sticks. Yeah.
Why?
Because you've got 2 sticks to go for. Maybe it should be 4 points for 4 points for upright and 6 points 6 points for the crossbar.
Yeah, or for every time you hit a solid object, you get an extra 4 points. So you ding ding ding. There you go, 12 points.
12 points.
But on that, so Ford hits the post, it comes down, Tuipulotu knocks it on, Nick Ezekwe and the rest of the pack go wild. Ezekwe's just come on. Yeah, giving it all that. Scrum, get battered.
Yeah.
And it was absolutely battered as well.
It was battered.
Really battered.
That's poor. I remember Scarlett celebrating a famous win against Leicester Tigers at the Forest Ground. Is it the Forest Ground you call it when Nottingham Forest play?
The County Ground.
County
ground.
No.
That'd be Notts County, surely.
That'd be not. What? Where did Notts Forest play football?
I'm sure it's like.
No, I think it's County Ground, and Notts County play
City Ground.
City Ground.
That's the one.
Nottingham Forest is the City Ground.
And then Notts County play at Meadow Lane.
Good knowledge.
So look,
never been to Nottingham.
I have. I've played at Notts County.
Do you know what the fact? One thing I bet you remember this. The fact that everyone used to say about Nottingham when we were about 17, 18 years
Best
of age.
night out in the world.
No.
Was it something to do with
Guns?
Girls to boys ratio?
Girls to boys ratio. Everyone used to say, "Oh, Nottingham Uni 6-to-1 ratio."
6 to 1. What?
Which was just rubbish. That's just not true.
In Cornwall Rugby Club once, we've gone on to talk to Mansfield. Mansfield's why? Because the women are really easy, Mansfield. I was like, really? How do you know? Honestly, mate. Honestly, Mansfield.
It's like I've heard about 15 different towns in the UK have the most pubs per capita or the most pubs per square mile, or whatever it is, some stupid thing.
I'm pretty sure that was the case for Warrington. Warrington was one of those places. And I remember walking around Warrington, like, there are a lot of pubs here.
Warrington back in the day.
I don't want to go over old ground, but the best part about listening to Jason Robinson speak, the Christian stuff, throw it in the bin. The racist stuff, couldn't care less. Impoverished children, not really for me at that time, but getting paid £1 million for Wigan and going to all of these like northern towns when they were absolutely bouncing. Like, so what do you do on a Thursday night, Jace? Halifax. A night out in Halifax and a good night out in Halifax on a Thursday night. How about Tuesday? Oldham. Obviously, it was Oldham. Bury, Rochdale. Anywhere with a rugby league town 20, 30 years ago was bouncing.
Yes.
It's easily his best stories.
I have been on a few nights out in Nottingham. A few good nights. It was good fun.
Yeah, I've heard that. I can't remember. Oh, yeah. So Scarlets were celebrating their famous win in a Heineken Cup semi-final. Now, you'll notice the problem with this story, which is Scots never got to the final of a Heineken Cup.
I was going to say.
So they celebrate more. In my mind, it's like Martin Johnson knocks it on or something. And like, yeah, get in. And then I'm sure they have a scrum. They concede the scrum penalty, and Tim Stimpson knocks it over. And I'm sure he hits the crossbar on the way over.
Oh.
I need to watch those. I bet all of those details are wrong. Stephen Jones definitely celebrates.
I'm going to see if I can find that game.
It's Leicester Tigers, Penalty Scarlets. It must be it's before 2000, I reckon.
2002.
Okay.
60 metre, Tim Stimpson's 60 metre injury time penalty handed.
There we
Leicester
go.
Tigers a dramatic 13-12 win.
I know my rugby.
Wow.
He'll never get this wrong.
Wow, yeah, semi-final of the Heineken Cup. I'll see if I can get the team sheet.
So Tim Stimpson, in my mind, kicked off the great England era. Because if you remember, he was the one that scored the try to beat South Africa away when I think, is it Martin Johnson was first captain? And then that South Africa tour that built into the England team, and then eventually... So in fact, Tim Stimpson won the World Cup.
Yeah. Rewind. Yeah, I'm trying to find the team, but can't easily because it was pre-internet for...
It pretty much was.
Yeah.
It'll be your usual characters like Leon Lloyd, Austin Healey, Pat Howard, Tim Stimpson, probably Booth, and whoever else is on the other wing. Something like that. I guarantee it.
Guarantee. There's one other thing I was going to mention in this game before we move on to other stuff, which is, we mentioned Angus Gardner before. He did something that I'd not heard before, but I quite liked.
Go on.
With the Use It 9.
Oh, yeah. I saw that.
He said 2. So it's Use It 9, and presumably in his head, he was counting 5, 4, 3.
Right.
He said 2. And then, which I quite like, because the weekend before last, or last weekend, in the Bath Sale game, Carl Dixon penalised Schroeder for Use It. And he said, use it. He said, use it again. He said, come on. And then about 4 seconds after his third indication that he had to use it, he eventually kicked it, but Dixon blew up at the same time. I went back and counted. It was 14 seconds from the ball, from the first use it to the penalty going.
Wow.
That's just... It's just stupid. And it wasn't even in Bath's favour, because Bath were by far the better team. Yeah. They want more ball in play. They don't want to be wasting time like that. So I quite like the 2. Let's see if it catches on. But
so more
first
England
impressions good.
So should we have more England chat, Exeter chat, Broughton Park chat, or
Scotland chat? Scotland, Fiji?
Maybe Eddie Jones chat. What do you want to do?
Yeah, go on. We've got an email here from Basil, contact eggchasers@gmail.com. Says, team, what's your reaction to Danny Care's revelations about Eddie Jones? Are you surprised no player has spoken out about it until now, apart from an Owen Slot article a few years ago? The press have never picked up on it. I haven't read it. Can you summarise it?
Yeah, I mean, it basically just makes out Eddie Jones to be a horrific bully. And there's no stories in there which actually surprise me.
And what's the format in which this is coming out? So is it a serialised bit of a book?
I think it's part of a book, yeah.
Yeah, this is in an extract from his new book.
Right, okay. There's a bit of me, not dubious, but there's a bit of me where I'm thinking the purpose of this story and the being, I don't know, how much of this is, if I just frame it this way a little bit.
No, it's pretty damning.
Yeah.
Pretty damning.
I'd like to know what the facts are rather than the opinion is.
Well, I don't think it's a fact. I think when it's how can I put this in a very diplomatic way? It's kind of like Weinstein. When there's enough people pointing the fingers saying the same story, to me, there's enough smoking guns here. So yeah, this is probably true. I mean, probably not every... I mean, you've seen how he behaves in press conferences. You saw how he behaved to Owen Slot. I mean,
Well, the other element is that there definitely seems to be an incredibly stark difference between the way people talk about Eddie Jones, who were the players that he picked, and the players that he didn't pick. And part of that could just be the people that he didn't pick felt really hard done by and looked at it through one lens. Like Courtney Laws says he's the best coach he's ever had. James Haskell absolutely loves him.
Actually, what Courtney Laws told me is he doesn't have a problem with him because he was untouchable. James Haskell absolutely says that. Absolutely says it.
Dylan Hartley.
But these are the untouchables. So he actually says there are some untouchables.
Yeah.
And they were untouchable, and then everyone else. And I think there is more than enough evidence to suggest that that's how the guy is. Now, I have no issue with being very direct and very harsh and saying uncomfortable things. But when I read this, it does read just like bullying. I can't... I don't like I don't like the word bullying in adult situations. Most of the time I think, grow up, right? Just grow up. It's not... but this is beyond things like just being harsh, just being truthful.
So I haven't read it. So and some people may have not done. So what sort of things?
So the idea that the analysts were very frightened to say things, the way that he would play with people. So Kieran Brooks was asked, but basically everything was a test, and we know everything is a test because we've heard the stories from Matt Gitto drinking his beer, and sometimes it's funny. Right, and I think you can have fun with those concepts, but when you're messing around with 20 grand a game and whatnot, I don't think you can. So Kieran Brooks has asked, "How was the fitness?" He says, "I enjoyed it." "You're not working hard enough, mate." The next time, how's the fitness? "Oh, I'm knackered." "Oh, you're not fit enough, mate." And just sending people home. It just doesn't sound like a good bloke at all, actually.
So there is quite a few stories like that one.
Yeah.
Unlike with Kieran Brooks, he gave him 20 quid. Kieran Brooks came in with a new haircut, and Eddie Jones gave him 20 quid and said, "Go and get your haircut. Don't come back tomorrow." And Kieran Brooks took the 20 quid and was like, "What do I do then? What do I do, guys? What do I go and spend the 20 quid? Do I give it back to Eddie? Show him I'm tough?" And he got the lads to get the clippers out and cut his hair down to a crew
I mean, that's
cut.
not on.
No. Well, hold on. Yeah.
So there's those kind of stories. Now, I actually think stuff like that I think it's okay for the players.
Depends on
do you know what I think?
Relationship.
I don't know, but my best guess, that is strange, and I can see
that is a bit weird.
In any workplace, ordinary workplace, that is completely unacceptable, obviously. But what I'm imagining in my head, if that happened as is described then, what he was wanting Kieran Brooks to do is go,
Hey, it's Mark Maron from WTF, here to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. And I'm sure the reason you're listening to this podcast right now is because you chose it. Well, choose Progressive's Name Your Price tool, and you could find insurance options that fit your budget, so you can pick the best one for your situation. Who doesn't like choice? Try it at Progressive.com. And now, some legal info. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Keep your money. Keep your money. I'm here to play rugby. Pick me as a rugby player. I'll see you at dinner.
Yeah, Tim, you have to remember this, and this is really taking me a bit by surprise. And I told you the Matt Postle story a few weeks ago. I was talking to an agent friend of mine, and this is just not how rugby players work. Like, the deference.
Well, because it is hierarchical.
Yeah, it's so high.
It's like military-style hierarchy.
No,
you can't.
South Korean military hierarchical.
South Korean airlines hierarchy.
So I wonder if it literally was a test, and it's like, no, you don't have it. And I'm not saying I agree with that.
I think he's testing people all the time.
I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm not saying I agree with that, but I cannot imagine Courtney Laws, even a young Courtney Laws, I cannot imagine him going, oh, what shall I do? What shall I do? I reckon he would have gone,
no, mate.
No, mate.
Yeah. And I think there's probably some... But that's why he's a bully, right? And so I think if you could get away with it, he would. The thing which always gets me about Eddie Jones is the tough guy attitude in front of the journalists. Some of the things he said to players, which are undoubtedly true, and then the way that he absolutely bricked it when 3 skinny Scottish lads gave him some jip on a train.
He's a 60-year-old man, 1 against 3.
But
it's outside. But it's outside the hierarchy as well.
Exactly. It's outside the hierarchy.
So this is
He's a bully.
It's that one thing. Is he? What film or show did I watch recently, which just suddenly popped in my head? Anyway, I'll come to that. But
like.
It's the bear. It just reminds me of the bear. Sorry, turns out the guy that's this chef in the bear, the main character, has this, and he sort of bumps into again his old mentor who treated him like crap, like absolute crap. When he met him, the mentor was just basically went, "Yeah, you're here now because I was like that."
Yeah,
as in, I made you, I gave you what you needed, I made you the best. I made you as good as you are now. Yeah,
so there's a chef that spoke to me really, really poorly when I was 16. Really, really affected me. When I see him again, I'm going to batter him. And I will keep that promise, right, until I see him. And he is somewhere around Llandudno, right? If I don't batter him, I will severely intimidate him in front of everybody, regardless of what the crowd is. Hopefully, North Wales Business Club. Fingers crossed.
This guy will be about 50 now, or 60.
No, he'd only be about 10 years older than me.
Well, that puts him at 50.
Good.
I'm not defending that behaviour. But my point being is, I don't think it would be my best guess is it won't be Eddie Jones entertaining himself. It will be him doing what he thinks is creating an elite rugby player.
Look, there's definitely an element of like he wants to test people, and I think there is some method of creating uncertainty but then he doesn't do it consistently.
Or assertiveness, actually, probably.
But he doesn't do it to Owen Farrell. You know, he doesn't do it to Courtney Laws. He doesn't do it to, like, there's a list of players.
But this is what I mean. I can imagine maybe he did, but we don't hear the stories because the first time he did it, Owen Farrell was like,
keep your 20 quid, mate.
No, what are you doing? I'll talk to you later, Eddie. I don't know what.
I think if you're going to engage with these sort of things, it's a bit funny. You've got to bring people with you. I just don't think it's good.
No. I get that. I totally get that.
You don't know the effect it's having on people. Your job is not to unearth only the players that you can work with. Your job is to try and improve every player to get the best possible team. Now, he went through 50 players at England, which tells me he's going through 4 more players than, say, Warren Gatland did at Wales.
That was in the first 2 years.
Yeah. I don't think he could get away with it. But that said, he did all right with Japan. Yeah, and this is the thing with Eddie Jones. Something works, I don't know what it is. Something works. Is it just because rugby is so hierarchical? You can be an absolute dick and make people do things because it's just the way that rugby is.
Oh, I mean, you can count. I mean, there's so many stories of unorthodox or megalomaniac or controlling kind of coaches, like unlikable but very effective.
Yeah, and the lads are quite friendly, often fail. They often fail. Like every single director of rugby that I've met has an underlying hint of menace about them. Like Alex Sanderson. I'll give you an example. Alex Sanderson is actually a really nice bloke. Right? So you meet him, he's all jovial, but like you just know you don't want to upset him.
Times.
Because he will. I mean, he's known as an absolute psychopath from his playing days.
Gustard, when we met him.
Lovely bloke.
Lovely, charming, charismatic, but you wouldn't want to get on the wrong side of him.
Well, there is a hint of menace, isn't there?
Very much so.
And rugby has to be that way. I just hate... But what I hate, it's like when people treat waiters bad. It's things like he treated his analysts poorly. He made a scientist stand outside.
No, I'm 100% with you.
Yeah, that's the bit that I didn't like. I think the players, particularly because they're getting paid to be in camp, they're getting paid very highly, 20 grand a game. They're fighting for the opportunity to get paid 20 grand to do what they love for 80 minutes. They should be big enough and man enough to take it. And if they can't, maybe they shouldn't be there. With the analysts and the staff, and there's one story that Kerr tells, which I've heard it before, but I can't remember where from, about he blew up at an analyst in front of everyone in a team session, and he texts him later saying, apology. He sees him later and he says, apologies, mate. I've bought you some steak for you and the missus to enjoy tonight. I've been to the butcher's, got you some steak. Go home and enjoy this on me. I'm sorry it won't happen again. And when the lad gets home, Eddie texts him and says, check the bag, it's sausages, not steak. You're only sausages, you need to be better before you can become steak.
Yeah. Now just
that's vindictive.
Yeah. And just think about this.
That is not
I'm just
good.
sort of saying it to this nth degree there. Like, you got some steak, you phone your wife, look, don't buy any tea, we're having steak, the boss has bought a steak. Then you get home, and then you've got to say, oh, actually, it's this, because he's trying to insult you in front of your wife. I think he's an absolute scumbag for that.
That sticks in the core.
And that is, and like you say, the fact he's not a rugby player and that's an employee.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a tribunal right there.
Yeah, but with rugby players, one of the things which kind of does, if you want men of real fortitude, when that sports scientist was sent out of the room, I'm 90% sure I would have said something at that point if I was in that room. Now that's probably why I'm not a professional. You would have said something.
Yeah,
you would. Well, you're more likely to say something than I would. And it is disappointing that the senior England players who are going to be leaders and hard men. Hang on, this is unacceptable. Someone should have said this is unacceptable. But again, it's this deference in rugby, and people don't realise like how controlling the whole thing is, and to a degree has to be.
Yeah. So, just back to the point you made right at the start, the impression that I got from this was there is all these are true stories. Some of these are very much bordering on totally unacceptable, particularly for the
so they're already
staff.
Unacceptable. It's just, are they totally unacceptable? If they're bordering on totally unacceptable.
So yeah, but some of them are totally unacceptable for the analysts and the support staff, if we call them that. There is a bit of this that is Danny Kerr. He's got a book to sell and book to write, and there is a bit of this, maybe not necessarily embellishment, but he's writing it in the right way, and there is a bit. It comes out towards the end of it that he, because of the way that he was treated by Eddie Jones, because he was released for several years, not called up, then called up, played a couple of tests, and then he had the worst thing that can happen to any player that happened to Luther Burrell, Harrison, and Danny Kerr, taken off after 30 minutes.
Yeah. And now, this is an interesting point.
He came across as having a little bit of an axe to grind because he was personally hurt by...
But what was the reason for him coming off? This is really interesting. Did you read the names?
His Van Portfleet was coming on.
No. It was a Boks, and the analysts were told. So, he had a conversation with an AFL guy, who said you need to make your a substitution before half time to fire up the rest of the team. It was just a pure psychological trick, attempted psychological trick. And they did win, so, in that case it won. I have actually less problem with that than I have with anything else. I mean, if there's actually a thing which works, so what do you have? Mako, Jamie George.
It was Mako, Jamie George, or so
there's a list of players who he was going to bring off
on the team sheet. It had all of the players, and it had things that Eddie was looking for in the game. So it might have been ball speed, line speed, whatever it is. But he had a box around 3 players' names that were Jamie George, Mako, and Danny Kerr. Take off after 30 minutes because of this psychological trick that if you're pissed off with your team, don't make the sub at half time. If they're underperforming, make it before half time because that has the most psychological effect on the players. And it I think on all 3 occasions that Eddie did it, Harrison, the Big Luth, and Danny Kerr, it worked and it resulted in a win for England. So,
I actually have no problem. I mean, if everyone knows the boss is going to do this and here's the psychology behind it. I mean,
you can't tell them
because that would ruin the psychology.
But hang on, why would it be different to making the change after half time? Because everyone knows the person coming off has made the most mistakes. But you just say, look, we're going to do it before because of this. But it's still not nice
because you're doing it. You're frightened.
It's like showing the magic. It's showing how a magic trick is done.
But I think the worst part about this, not the worst part, the thing which makes it different is those players were not involved again. And I think that's a big difference. So if he did it just as a substitution because it works better before the half, fine. But he did it to lads and you never saw them again, which makes me think there's a little bit more to this.
It's odd that Jamie George's name was in the frame then because he's the current England captain.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah,
interesting.
It's worth a read.
Yeah, I've come to the conclusion that not a good bloke at all. Maybe a good bloke originally, but absolute power corrupts and all the rest of it. I think England I think England were very irresponsible with the lack of oversight on him because some of that stuff was to come out. It's not a good look for rugby. And by the way, I'm not Mr. Soft. I don't particularly. I don't mind very, very harsh environments. I don't mind things like blanket punishments. I don't mind any of these things. I don't mind showing people up and exposing them for exactly what they are. But I think it's the tricks, not ever being able to get something right, or not explaining your logic afterwards, or not bringing people along with you. That's difference for me. And when you're dealing with 20 grand a game, rugby players on 2 things: they don't last very long, and they don't earn that much. So the amount of power that he's got over him and the damage that he could do and did do, in my opinion, is massive.
Yeah, and I think when it spills out of the rugby playing squad, if it was kind of calculated and I know I'm being, in any other context, this is out of order and I wouldn't do this, but this has an effect in the way that you just described the substitutions. And by the way, on those substitutions, I don't think any player's got... I mean, you can feel like, oh, I'm gutted I came off after half an hour, but that's your job. The coach makes those calls, just get on with it.
Yeah. And if you win the game...
Yeah, if you win the game, then correct.
But then, you're judged to be correct. Like, if that George Ford drop goal doesn't hit the ball, hits the inside of the post and goes in, you're judged to be correct.
The Danny Kerr substitution seemed to be a different type of substitution to the previous ones, because... It was mentioned that he had the chat with the...
I think that...
It was all part of the same...
I think it was all part of the same psychological...
I think you do have to tell people like what you're doing. I don't think it ruins the magic at all, actually. Saying, look, you're going to change this now. These are the psychological reasons why. There's nothing wrong with that.
I know, I think it is... It does pull the curtain back. I think the psychological effect, if all the players know that, is not the same.
Oh, he's doing his psychological thing. He's not like... Because actually it's like, oh, God.
It's still a substitution, though, isn't it? Yeah. It's still, And those guys did get banished from the team forever. So that wasn't a psychological trick in any way. So there are tricks and there's tricks. I heard one, Special Forces selection, which was... They had some guys who volunteered to do Special Forces selection. So, accompany the guys who were on selection and sort of run the course, but they weren't Special Forces themselves. So when they did their selection... The people knew that they knew what the course was. So at the very end of the day, when they thought they'd finished, right, okay, and now you're going to have to do an extra, whatever it is. and lads just dropped out because psychologically they thought, God, I thought we'd finished. So the guys threw in the backpacks, started running, and as soon as they started running, they said, no, come back. That's a test, right? And some guys dropped out and they were never seen again. That's a test. That is legitimate. But I think when you're constantly getting on people's back and sending them home with sausages or kicking them out of rooms or telling them to change their hair.
When you get outside of, I would say to...
And that test as well.
I would love to speak to Kieran Brooks now, who's still playing, and he's in the twilight of his career, playing in the top 14 for Perpignan, I think. Anyway.
Yep, he is.
If you asked him now, what would you do differently in that situation? And I reckon he'd just say, I'll tell him to F off. And that probably might have, and I'm not saying it's right or the best way to do it or the most motivating factor, but that might have been something which made Eddie Jones go, yeah, that's my boy. Oddly, whereas the analysts and stuff like that, when it goes outside of players, bang, out of order. Yeah. And that makes you think it's not just, it might not just be about motivating players, and that it's a little bit more questionable. Anyway, okay, interesting. I'll give it I was going to say I'll give it a read. I probably won't give the book a read, but I'll read the article.
The article's worth reading.
Yeah, it is.
Definitely.
I think it'd be worth reading.
Not that long.
I've got the Sean Long book. Do you want to read that? That is worth it.
I would read. I'd read that. Where next? Scotland.
Exeter Chiefs.
Should we briefly touch on Scotland?
I didn't see any of it. I don't even know who won. I assume Scotland won, yeah?
Scotland hammered Fiji.
They absolutely smashed them. Scotland have got depth. Yep. Scotland have depth.
This was a... not entirely, but it was not a first-string Scotland team, partly because of Finn Russell and Blair
Kinghorn and
a few others who were unavailable.
Yeah. But generally, it just goes...
Johnny Gray in one.
Yeah, Johnny Gray, who chose not to be in the squad, much to Gregor Townsend's annoyance. But they look really good against, conversely, a very, very weakened Fiji team who have none of their top 14 stars. In fact, my boy Makala, the centre for Bayonne.
Oh, yeah.
Bayonne were ahead against Toulouse last time I looked.
They were
7-5.
Ooh.
Oh, 12-8. 12-8, and it's about... And Makala's just scored 2 tries.
Full time.
Beloved Bayonne have beaten
Toulouse.
Admittedly, a DuPontless Toulouse.
Well, and none of the French players are available.
None of the French players. By the way, I was just looking at Antoine Dupont's win-loss ratio in the last 2 seasons. He has won 54 matches. And in the last 2 years, whether this is club country...
All sevens.
Well, yeah, I actually didn't factor that one in. He's lost 154, lost 7, but of the 7 defeats, 4 of them, he wasn't starting scrum half. He's only lost 3 matches in all rugby when he has started at scrum half.
Out of 57.
One of those was by a point to South Africa in a World Cup quarter-final.
Wow.
One of those was to Leinster away in the Champions Cup semi-final. And then there was only... that's the scale of the matches he's lost at. And there's only one other game. I can't remember who it was. It was in the top 14. That's... Oh, no, Ireland in the Six Nations.
Six Nations.
Those are the only 3 games he's lost where he started scrum half.
Wow.
So I'm obviously checking the absolute disaster, which is Racing 92.
Did all right.
Big win.
Well, I was like, oh, look at them languishing mid-table. How many wins have they got?
Same as everyone else.
Half.
Everyone wins roughly half their game. It's like...
Is that like Sam Stewart languishing in the Newcastle squad?
Okay, so Racing losers at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th in the table with their 5 wins. Bordeaux, on top of the table with their 6 wins.
6 wins.
So, okay, yeah, everyone's still in it.
So I've not seen any of this game, but it's notable. Farrell has not kicked for Racing.
He hasn't kicked for ages. There must be some injury. It must be something.
Because Dan Lancaster was kicking in this. Yeah, with Le Garrec, presumably.
Maybe it's not in his contract.
Maybe not.
Yeah, if you want the full package, like the kicking supplement on Owen Farrell, that's going to cost you an extra 200k, please.
So Scotland
yes.
hammered Fiji.
They hammered them.
Fiji, as you've said, none of their top 14 stars. They made it hard for themselves because they spent the entirety of the first 20 minutes down to 10 men and a brief period. Sorry, 10 men. down to 14 men in a brief period, down to 13 men because of ill discipline. They actually, after that, so in the first 24 minutes, Scotland scored 4 tries. So in that period where they were down 2 players, Scotland got the bonus point. After that, they came back quite nicely. They scored 3 tries of themselves for themselves to make it 17-24, something like that. And then Scotland just romped away with it in the second half.
4 tries for Darcy Graham.
Yeah.
To make him... Well, he equalised, and then Duan van der Merwe scored another one to go back ahead. But they're the 2 top try scores for Scotland.
They're yo-yoing on the 2.
Well, that's one way to get your wingers motivated, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
Darcy Graham, he's been out of international rugby for ages. Straight back in, 4 tries. He looks good. And their backline, there was some young... Tom Jordan made his debut. He looks really good. And when he's the fly half for Glasgow Warriors.
Okay.
Yeah.
Adam Hastings looked good as well. But Tom Jordan and Stafford McDowell were on, and when they were both on, I was looking at the Scotland backline outside 10, 9 and 10, and thinking they're all absolutely massive. And when Kyle Staines back and Blair Kinghorn's there, they're just Tuipulotu, Hugh Jones, Duan. Big boys.
Not quite Darcy Graham. If you got Stain and Rowe and Kinghorn, they are big boys.
We've got a full slate of internationals next week, haven't we?
Yeah, Scotland host, and on Scotland they host South Africa, which is massive.
Ireland's a Friday night game as well.
Is it?
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
How's that happened?
I don't know how, don't know why.
TNT, I guess, maybe it's part of that scheduling. What do you think of their coverage?
Having Austin Healey doing internationals is great.
I love it.
Yeah.
He's so good.
Yeah, so much better than the dross you get on the BBC.
Healey's great.
I did think, and I don't know what you think about this, there was a few too many times they said, and Austin Healey did it at one point during commentary, Craig Doyle did it a couple of times. Guys I've worked with for a long time, and they are amazing professionals, and they've obviously been told to do this, rightly or wrongly, we can discuss, but they were talking to a non-rugby audience much of the time, explaining what offside is and things like that. So
I assumed, because they were kind of dumbing it down, I assumed that this was being broadcast outside of England as well. Outside of the UK and Ireland as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's the question.
To a US audience.
My response to that might be, but like American football doesn't dumb itself down to try and get an audience.
They do try, though, like these little segments, don't they?
Oh, do
they do. Actually, the segments make them even more complicated. Like, now he's going to throw the ball and the receiver's going to look over his left shoulder. At the same time, he's going to keep his hip square, chop his feet, change his routes. Like, what? Some of the things they do in American football to try and make it accessible. My single favourite graphic was Calvin Johnson, the all-time great receiver for Detroit Lions. Big boy, 6'5", maybe 6'6".
Is he Megatron?
Megatron, right?
Yeah.
The graphic was him, right, standing in front of a double garage door because he's so big. All he needs to do is hit. If you can hit this door, Calvin Johnson can get the ball. Easy,
brilliant,
easy. I could be quarterback with Calvin Johnson.
But what would you think? Like, there's a bit of me that went, no, I'm a rugby fan. I've invested my entire life, and I'm your core audience. Like, focus on me a little bit, and don't and the other guys will just they'll love it enough that they'll stick around.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't think there's a balance.
Yeah, I wouldn't be good in rugby broadcasting, because I think what I would do is I'd look at the games and say, right, I don't know how I'm going to organise this. Maybe some sort of app, and you're only allowed to watch international if you've got enough Premiership games under your belt for this season. So to unlock the rights to watch international, you've have up to now. In fact, you've got to watch three Premiership games. Then you get to unlock you're not even allowed to buy it. The European package. Then you've got to watch a European package, 2 games,
bonus points.
Yeah, and then only then can you start having. You can have 1 international game for this year, and then next year, if you continue, I'll give you 2 international games.
So you're treating it like Hermes treat their customers.
Exactly,
trying to buy a Birkin bag.
Yeah, and I've been checking fans as they came in. Like, have you been Sea Tigers this year? Sorry, can't come in. Not today. So it's cost me 200. Don't care.
forced scarcity does work for luxury goods like that.
Yeah.
Like Hermes or Rolexes or Porsches.
I was going to say, were you telling me about... Did you say something about the manufactured waiting lists for cars?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
They could produce more on the production line.
Yeah.
Well, it's De Beers and their diamonds, isn't it?
Yeah, of course
it's exactly that. It's the forced scarcity. There was an interesting thing with Porsche about... If you are interested in cars, which lots of people listening to this podcast will not be, but I find this quite interesting. With Porsche during the pandemic, because their production capacity was significantly reduced, so they turned their production, rather than producing kind of let's just talk 911. So on the 911, you have various different levels of 911, from like a very base 911 Carrera through to a Carrera S, through to a 4S, to a Targa, through to the special models like a Turbo S, GT3, GT3 RS, GT2.
Just off the top of his head, he knows all of those.
It's like listening to David Flatman, this. Talking about 911s.
So they would generally produce more volume at the lower level, and the cheapest 911 is probably just over 100k. The most expensive is over 200k, and if you option that up, close to 300k. So they turned all the capacity away from the lower level models into those higher levels, so your GT3 RSs, your Turbo S's, etc. And what that has meant now, a few years later, those high-end models that there was this undersupply, they held their value phenomenally well because there were so few of them, because there was this forced scarcity. But Porsche switched their capacity to produce more of those to earn more money then, but effectively tanked the long-term value of those cars by oversupplying them long-term. So people who bought them because they were not depreciating assets, or not as greatly depreciating assets as most cars, have had their fingers burnt.
Yeah, and a lot of people, it's weird, if you watch like Porsche videos, there's a lot of talk, not about the car, but about the value that they store and they hold.
Yeah, which is not what you normally buy cars for.
It's same with, is it some of the Volkswagen, not the GTR, the one above that? GTI, the one above the G.
Oh, they are
yeah, there's something weird about
R.
that. Like if you buy one, then you sell it 6 months later. If it's actually worth more. It's something ridiculous.
Yeah, on those, because they're low volume, but not like the high end Porsche models.
No, it's like the special edition one, which they do every 4 years.
Oh, they'll be the end of life ones. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, that's a massive detour.
No, I can't remember how that related.
Because we're not letting people into Twickenham.
Yeah, JB's going to...
Unless you've gone to Bath. Unless you've gone to...
Oh, yes. That's right. No, Austin, and I was watching that, and obviously I've worked with these guys. I was actually thinking, like, Ben Kay obviously works on ITV, on England matches all the time. It's been a long, long time since Austin's done international rugby, and I just thought he'll be loving it. He was great. Ali Eakin was the same on commentary, and just got to mention Nick Mullins, who obviously has done lots of international TV rugby himself, but he used a great phrase to describe Darcy Graham's footwork. What did he say? He described it very Bill McLaren-esque, which was appropriate given, and it was at Murrayfield. I think it was describing his footwork as like a caffeinated octopus.
Wow. It's a turn of phrase.
Very good.
So Exeter Chiefs.
Yeah, what's going on?
Things have happened down in Devon. So Chiefs with a total of no wins or one win. No wins.
Rob Baxter's got the boots and the whistle out, and he's back on the training paddock.
Yep.
Hands-on coaching.
And Omar, the guy whose name I can never... Nemini.
Yeah.
Has got the boots. He's out. He's gone. So the axe has swung. Tony Rowe.
Previously at Bristol and at Worcester.
Yep, Worcester first, then Bristol. He's an MMA guy. He likes grappling. And he did something with South Africa Sevens. And he's just a very strange character, all in all. Apparently very intense. And obviously rated by... He's been at 3 Premiership rugby clubs.
Yeah.
So whatever he's doing... Well, he's been fired by 3 Premiership rugby clubs too, I guess. Or he's moved on, whichever. Anyway, so that has happened.
Excuse me.
Now, Exeter in the past have got rid of coaches, but not often. So Julian Salvi would be one that I can think of. He was also a defence coach, and that might be the only one I can think of, really. Yeah, that is literally the only one I can think of. I mean, I'm sure there are others, but that's
Gareth Steenson left, did he? Or is he still there, maybe? I don't know.
Steen's doing,
no, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, and also explicitly for poor performance. So Salvi went for poor performance. I've had a thought about this, and I wonder is it Dunning-Kruger?
Dunning-Kruger is a thing.
That's promoted to...
No, that's Peter Principal.
That's Peter Principal, promoted to a level of incompetence.
What's Dunning-Kruger?
Is those with the highest competence have the lowest confidence because they know all the things that can go wrong. Conversely, those with the lowest competence have the highest confidence because they think what they're doing is what good looks like because they have no idea what good looks like.
So, and it dovetails with that phrase that I can't remember what it is, but it's about people. The worst situation is people who know a little, not people who know a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then it's the Peter Principle, and I wonder if Rob Baxter is there. Now, let me explain this. People will think I'm mental for saying this about Rob Baxter. He's undoubtedly already one of the greatest coaches that England has ever produced. I'm happy to say that.
Yeah.
We're already there.
Yeah.
But he's not a coach, is he? He's a director of rugby.
He is now, yeah.
Now, let's just park Exeter Chiefs.
Wait, he's a board member.
Yeah. Let's just park Exeter Chiefs, right? And let's look at a different club. Any club. And I'm going to pick, for argument's sake, Leicester Tigers. But we could pick Bath, if you want. Now, both of these clubs have an agent, a guy with agency background, running the rugby operations. And I think this is quite smart. A lot of American football teams do the same thing as well. You have an ex-agent come in to be your talent director, for want of a better word, or director of pro personnel, I think they would call it. And this is important because if you're an agent, obviously you've got your fingers in all sorts of pies throughout your entire life. You know how to negotiate, and also you've got this massive network of people. So dropping them in above the DOR, or unless the Tigers' case, they don't even have a DOR, do they? You usually have a head coach. So they've got a general manager and a head coach. I think it is Rob Burgess that does the recruitment now for Bath. Similar sort of principle. And you look across the league, and there's a lot of people doing a lot of analytics on players before bringing them in, but also with massive networks for coaches. Like Steve Diamond's got a huge network of coaches.
And does this tie in with
Rob Baxter?
No, they'd be more connected with salary cap management as well. These people.
Yes. So I don't have a problem with Exeter's recruitment at all because they do it a different way. And actually, when they do recruit outside of the club, they seem to do it very, very well. Not an issue. Rob Baxter's got that fairly nailed down. But where it worries me is I don't think they can move on without him. Like, someone in charge of a rugby club should be able to assemble a coaching team underneath him. And I wonder if Rob Baxter, with his entire career being at Exeter, with one season at Gloucester, I might add, has that coaching connection. Can he bring in the people? We know he can bring in players, fine, but can he bring in the people around him? And if he can't reconstruct the coaching team without him actually having to be the coach, which is what happens every single year. It's happened like 3 years now, hasn't it? Certainly twice. You've got to ask, do you need someone not a Tony Rowe, but somebody else in Exeter who can say, right, actually, I'm not going to do any coaching, but I have this huge network of coaches. I know who's good, because it would seem Rob Baxter does not have that ability. He is the man. Everyone else below him is kind of subservient and Baxter light or a Baxter acolyte. But they need something else, don't they? They need to be bringing in talent from outside or developing it, and they haven't developed the coaching talent to a high enough standard to take over the team.
It does appear that there is something in that because of both the way that they're performing and the way that they've jettisoned coaches and Baxter having to step up.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think there maybe is something in the Peter Principle. And there is also something, the roles that Baxter has been promoted into, well, they're just brand new roles. They didn't exist prior to Baxter getting promoted into them.
So they're trying to move him up for some reason. But is that the right role for him? Is he just the head coach or the director of rugby?
Should he just be given more money because he is now better at being what he was?
I was going to say, it feels like he's being rewarded with these roles. It's thank you for your service and your achievement. Here's a bit more money and a bigger role.
The way you give dictators medals
Yeah. Whereas
More money
the whole
fight.
point of the Peter Principle is value someone more highly for the thing that they're great at and the thing that they do.
So like, he's obviously got his play. Like, he can obviously do some of these. Most of the roles great, but what about the coaching side?
Also, on a day-to-day, I imagine Rob Baxter, as he, as you move through your life, your priorities change. He talks about his family a lot and all the rest of it, but maybe he doesn't want the day-to-day stuff quite as much. Maybe he's proactively sought.
But then you've got to think, like, well, what's the future for Exeter? So Exeter have got 2 massive points of failure. One, how old's Tony Rowe? What happens if he goes? I mean, that is doomsday scenario. What's he, late 70s? And then what happens with Baxter? Because I think you've got to say something. You're head coach or coach overseer, but when you go, everyone goes.
Isn't Tony Rowe? He pumps a lot of money into it, but it's not quite set up in that way, is it?
No, it's Exeter Supporters Trust.
That's it. It's a trust. Yeah. And he acts as chairman of the trust.
Yeah.
And the club.
The Diamond situation at Sale was kind of similar. Obviously, very different characters, but it was similar. Diamond
different levels of success as well.
Was director of rugby. Then he went off up to like board member, CEO, and then he got his name director.
Yeah. Thing about Diamond though,
part ownership of the club, and then he got his whistle out, and Brian Redpath, jog on, son.
Yeah, off you go. So after wrestling Redpath away from Gloucester, why? I mean, that might be Diamond's single biggest error. I mean, yeah. Anyway, on Diamond, the big difference for him is he does have a really interesting CV. So he did do Saracens, he was at Northampton, he did do Saxons, he did Russia. Like, that guy knows everyone and everything. So, but Rob Baxter, I wouldn't compare him to anyone in the country in terms of his coaching ability because he's fairly unique, but he doesn't have that broader sort of rugby. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm talking nonsense. Maybe he's got the numbers of every single director of rugby in the country and every single coach and chats regularly. I just don't think he does. I think he's very Exeter based.
That is the impression I get. But his recruitment for players has always been very, very good. So
he has many, many more success stories in recruitment than failures.
Yeah, but coaches. It's only the coaches I care about because I think player recruitment, I don't. Even now, even with them losing, I look at the team and I'm like, it's not a bad team. They will be fine. And Rob Baxter has to go in. But what do you do above Rob Baxter? That's the question. Unless you keep him there forever.
That is interesting.
Watch this space. Well, we've got a few weeks yet before Premiership's back, so...
Gutted. More this dross international stuff. Joe Marler?
Joe Marler announced his retirement again.
What did you make of the hacker thing?
Who cares? It's a terrible dance. It really is. It's bland. It's ordinary. Like, there's nothing special about it anymore. It's been politicised. Apparently, it's culturally significant. I mean, it didn't used to be culturally significant in the 70s when... it just looks like a joke, but now it's like highly rehearsed, highly commercialised, and it has this sort of, that cultural sensitivity all about it. And even worse, like when World Rugby stopped making laws, like don't cross the line. And we spoke about plastic energy before. Plastic responses make me sick. Like, just ignore it. Just ignore it. Just go and chuck the ball around. Like,
you're from the David Campese camp.
Yeah,
but used to just run around and do kicks and
whatever you
warm
want,
up.
Childish dance. I mean, that exactly. You should be. The more people tell me to respect it, the less I respect it. It's the more you protest. At this point, I wouldn't even look at it. Let alone, it's going to be a special rugby moment and we're all going to step forward in unity. It makes me sick.
I remember Alistair Campbell as the spin doctor for the 2005 Lions planting this story, and it was hyped up in the build up to that test. Brian O'Driscoll's going to pick up a blade of grass and throw it to meet the challenge of the hacker. That happened in 2005. Now I love that the hacker. I absolutely love it. The ones I remember most, the 2011. You were there for that one in Cardiff. For the one where
but they didn't have laws around it.
No, they didn't. No, exactly. The French tricolour flag T-shirts and
2007.
2007, sorry, and up in the face there was Norm Hewitt and Richard Cockerell eyeball to eyeball.
Fine, good.
At Old Trafford, just up the road. It was ace. Yeah. So you used the word sensitivity there. I would say the response to Joe Marler's tweets. His first tweet was, "Bin the hacker." It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then he elaborated and said, basically, World Rugby's rules are crazy. Teams should be able to do what they want.
Correct.
Within reason. I agree with him on his second point, totally. I disagree with him on the first one, but the sensitivity of the response to his first one, even if he has that opinion, was so precious and pearl-clutching. It was unreal.
The hacker we see on TV is rubbish, right? That hacker is rubbish. Like, what they want to do culturally in New Zealand is completely up to them. I couldn't care less. But it's the rules around it from World Rugby. Now, contrast this with another game which happened maybe this week, maybe last week. England-Samoa. Rugby League.
Well, this is what Joe Marler, this is what prompted the tweet.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So they're face-to-face, and you just feel the tension and how... it's like... It's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. And you can see these two young men who want to batter each other, and they don't. And then right at the end, it's like, I don't know if they give a little handshake, a little fist bump. That's what it should look like, because you can tell that they really mean it. They really, really mean it. And there's a deep sort of, want to just destroy each other. Like that was perfect. And then you see this, tepid, pale, awful, commercialised dance jig. And I hate it. And World Rugby saying, no, you can't...
Well,
no.
I was going to say, I think what you hate about it is the... Yeah, is the
way we're told to respect it.
Is the World
Not my culture.
Is the World Rugby part of it. Because it's, for one thing, it's a war dance, summoning the spirits and laying down a challenge. And to go, lay down a challenge, but with a clear 10-metre... gap between the two of you so that the cameras can properly get this spectacle, and then seconds later they're going and lumping 7 bells out of each other.
Yeah,
just leave them. They're the guys.
Hey,
let them do what the hell they want to do.
When I go to Australia, should I ever be good enough to play international rugby, which I think that ship sailed, but we live in hope, right? I'll have to stand there and listen to them pretend to ask for permission to play on grass, right? Which is, of course, is ludicrous, and we all know it's ludicrous because permission has never not been granted. I'm sure I've missed the point, right? I'm sure. But that's their culture. Fine. You look as ridiculous as you want. But then when you come over to the UK, I mean, if you want to dance, I will allow you to dance. But why? It's not particularly... I think. I mean, it should be Morris dancing. Why should I be subjected to this ludicrous thing of summoning spirits? I don't believe in any of that.
I think
because I'm a nice guy, you may dance, and because it's a spectacle and you did it as a tradition, fine. It's part of the game, fine. But as soon as you start putting laws around it, and you say you must respect it, absolutely not. Absolutely no. It's like when they tell me you must wear rainbow laces. It's on that level for me. You must wear rainbow laces. Absolutely not.
Compulsion,
isn't it?
Yeah, I don't like that either. But more's the point. I do love the haka, and I thought it was great, this one. But I would just get rid of all of that red tape because.
Do you remember the minor amount of trouble that I got into about the haka?
No.
Yeah, this is really bad. This was really, really bad. So, Betfair or someone employed me to do like a monologue on the haka. I called it like a commercialised jig and whatnot. Right? I really went to town there, right? And it's like, where the hell is this? By the way, this is not a funny story. It is not I'm not going to tell it because now I've said it's not a funny story. You might laugh. Right, I'll tell it anyway. So, I said all that commercialised jig, waste of time. They never released it. It's like, well, where is it? Anyway, they finally released it recently, like 2 months later. And they released it on I think the morning of the Christchurch massacre.
Oh God!
Oh,
so
my
I don't know
goodness.
what the PR team were doing that day, but they weren't they weren't reading the news. So on your Twitter feed, it's like Christchurch massacre, far right extremists. They'd filmed it. It's one of the most horrific things that has happened in the Western world.
Dreadful.
Frankly. And then 2 minutes later, that's Jonathan Beardmore talking about the haka. I was like, this is awful.
Oh, God.
Actually.
Did you get them to take it down then?
I phoned them. I left messages. Who do you call in Betfair, though? Or whoever it was. Bet365, I think it was. Or someone like that. I was phoning as many people as I could, sent emails. But it's such a massive organisation. It's not like Betfred. It's not like Fred picks up the phone. And also, it wasn't made by Betfred. It was made by an external company.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was a bad day.
Yeah. But I would say there was a lot of pearl clutching going on with Joe Marler's initial tweets.
Yes.
Whether you agree or don't. And, but it got a load of slowly dying news outlets, a few clicks that day. Well done. Mm-hmm. Congrats. Unfortunately, that's Joe Marler's last meaningful contribution to an international rugby match.
I don't know about that. He's come out of retirement before. Let's wait until there's something big on the horizon and he brings himself out of retirement again. When they realise he's still the best loose head prop in the country.
Time for the next World Cup.
Maybe you don't need to train so hard.
Next World Cup, Joe Marler, 37, Dan Cole, 40, propping up the scrum.
Yeah. Too old for this shit, dusting off of the boots. So, let's talk about Broughton Park. Did we talk H?
The Battle of South Manchester, the old force against the new force in level 6 or 7.
Yeah, remarkably, we've now won 9 out of 10 games.
Wow.
That is very good.
It's surprisingly good.
Top of the table then?
Nope, second.
12-team league?
I think so, yeah.
And only one
You played everyone once?
Nope.
One team get promoted?
I have no idea. I'll level with you. Pre-season, promotion was so far away from my thoughts, I have no idea what the promotion situation is, and I'm still not thinking anything like that.
Sensible.
Because we are winning, but we might not be as good as we think. And I think it's probably a good way to... I think the winning might be covering up some deficiencies, but we are getting better. That is for sure. So, went to...
And you played in this game?
I did. I had probably my best game for a year or so. I played okay.
Against your old club and South Manchester rivals.
Yeah, so I showed up there. We were down 17 points to 9 or something at half-time.
At half-time.
Oh, right, wow.
You gave the lads a big talking to.
We gave him a big talking to, and then we didn't
Did you bring anyone off after 30 minutes?
No, we didn't. That
was your mistake.
Yeah, absolutely was. And then they didn't score another point after that. So we both got 2 tries each. Then they started giving away penalties. So there's a few things that I think from this game. Oh, but here's an interesting point. I got there, and the Broughton Park coaches and players were remarkably frosty with me. Far more frosty than they otherwise would be. It's like, this is odd. I mean, I was here for 10 years. Why would they be so frosty? So the morning of the game, I wrote a small message to my team consisting of about 1,000 words.
Is that small compared to your normal pre-match?
Yeah, I mean, part of the course. And it somehow remarkably got leaked to Broughton Park before the game. Now, I'd never accuse anyone in this room of leaking that. So one of my teammates has gone out their way to send that to Broughton Park. Anyway, I did wonder why, like, I got absolutely leathered twice on kick-off receipts.
I mean, that is standard, isn't it?
Yeah. Have you seen the video?
I've seen the video.
I got leathered twice.
Very good fun.
And the crowd go, yeah,
get him.
Like, every single breakdown, I was having my head rubbed in the mud. Like, they don't... I mean, I know they dislike me, but not this much.
I do remember going to watch you against Oldham ages ago.
Great. That was a great game.
Ages ago. And... you'd been mouthing off because they refused to play a game, or they called off a game earlier.
Called off a game. There were a few things. Yeah.
And you've been mouthing off on Twitter, and I was watching on the sideline.
Oh yes, yeah, the iconic line.
You got levelled. Yeah. You went, podcast that,
whack,
you tosser.
I did get absolutely leathered that game. That's still one of my favourite games, and we lost. Like, we went through a phase of not being able to... Oldham finished bottom 3, and we could never beat them. They were hard.
There was a lot of malice in that game. They were a hard bunch of boys.
They conceded a red card and a yellow card, right, in one incident, with both lads hitting me. Incredible scenes.
Very good.
Yeah,
so a big win.
Yeah, so we'll never know how that message got leaked. Will we, Tim? We'll never know.
Never know.
But I do want to talk about that message, actually, because I think it's about time. I was thinking about, like, how do we get more people to play rugby and actually want to play rugby?
Yeah.
And one of the ways you do it is you actually make the local derbies really, really spicy. And whatever method that may be, it has to mean something to somebody. And some of the Broughton Park higher-ups were not very happy with me, which is fine because, it's fine.
Did your boys buy into your message?
Oh, they loved it. Yeah. Of course, they loved it. Yeah.
Which was basically about let's build history. This is a club which had history. We're building history.
Yeah, and I wouldn't repeat what I said about Broughton Park on this podcast because it wouldn't be fair. If you still want to go and play rugby, you want to play Broughton Park, it's a fine choice. But it has to mean something. Because I imagine, your old man played for Wilmslow, right?
Yeah.
Now, I'm pretty sure when your man was playing for Wilmslow and they played Broughton Park, they were not nice about each other. In fact, I'm pretty sure they still don't talk to this very day.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's a good question. I do know that when I moved to Chorlton and it turned out my local club was Broughton Park, I remember it's like, really?
Yeah.
Broughton Park?
And now everyone's so nice to each other.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's great. We're all going to be rugby valleys.
But that was a tasty matchup back in the day.
And the reason
you'd have internationals on both teams.
Yeah, it was. I mean,
massive crowd knocking lumps out of each other.
Sale Broughton Park was massive. Probably Wilmslow Sale was pretty massive. Broughton Park Wilmslow was huge, and because it mattered, people wanted to be part of that. And it feels like it just doesn't matter now. It certainly doesn't matter much to Broughton Park. That is for sure. And I think if you're going to build, there's nothing wrong with actually getting a little bit of spice, a little bit of rivalry, and saying a few things about your rivals, which you might regret should you lose. But build the occasion.
I'm just looking at your table. Counties won, ADM, Lancashire, and Cheshire. So West Park are top. Obviously, you've not played them. Do you know?
No, we have. They beat us the first game of the season.
Oh, sorry. Of course, that's the only game you've lost.
When's the other match? Because it could come down to that. Well, again, there's a long way to go.
Long way to go. I think Tarleton are going to be very good.
Yeah, have you played Tarleton?
No, not yet. And they're always big and physical.
Yeah, so they've only lost 2 games, haven't they?
Yeah. The best team in that league, when they've got everyone together, is Aspel.
Aspel, who have only won 3 out of 8 games.
Yeah, because they don't ever get their best team together. But when they get their best team together, they are lethal.
So Aspel's Wigan way, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's rugby league territory.
Yeah. They are, honestly, they're a nightmare. They're an absolute nightmare. They're hard, they're skillful, they're quite big up front. Like, it's not, you just got to hope that, I don't know, some rugby league game is on or something ridiculous is happening.
It's Millennium Magic.
Yeah.
All the boys are away.
Some pie contest somewhere which they've all gone to visit. I got no idea.
How did the scrummaging go for you in this one? Were you tight head prop in this?
Pretty standard, pretty well.
Yeah.
The whole thing went pretty well.
I heard you had a good game.
I did all right. I did bits and pieces which were okay. I carried well.
What was the tunnel and the handshake like afterwards? After you
frosty.
They were ahead at half time. They must have been gutted to have lost it.
Yeah. I mean, look, I, as much as I've got some very severe criticisms of how Broughton Park has been run, I can't criticise the boys that played because they played bloody hard. They tackled hard. They played hard. This was a thing I was thinking, right? Our teams that are going young now, getting worse, short term, and everyone will catch them up later. So my thinking on this is looking around the league and talking to people that I talk to all the time, and actually talking up the leagues too. It's very clear to me that rugby is becoming an older game. So a lot of old boys are coming back in, not coming back into it, but they've been relied upon. For instance, I'm still playing tired prop. That's ridiculous, right? But this pattern repeats itself all over the show. If you look at, say, a team like Widnes from last year, they were quite old. Now, at some point, you've got to say, we need young lads. And I just don't think the standard of the young lads coming through is the same as it once was. So a lot of teams now who have gone young early might actually, in the long term, work out to be much better for them, as all the other teams slowly have to go through that transition.
It's a couple of things. One, if they stay there, and in the case of Broughton Park, they have a lot of youngsters who are from the university, who have gone to Manchester Metropolitan University, who they have a partnership with, and we play some of our games at Broughton Park, and every member of the uni rugby club gets a free membership to Broughton Park to play thirds, seconds, firsts in some cases. You can't imagine they're necessarily going to be around for years to come. It might actually be a mutually beneficial short-term deal.
But actually, Manchester has the biggest student body Oh, sorry, the student body which is most likely to stay.
Most likely to stay. So yes, it can pay off. The second one is how many you do at once, and drip feeding a couple of youngsters through into a settled, experienced, gnarly old team. Chucking a bunch of kids in at level 7 does not work.
No, it doesn't. I mean, we played against LSH the other week, and they're an old team. They are. I mean, I think I had one guy who was like 45, something like that. In fact, they had a couple of guys in their 40s. I think this isn't healthy for the game. It isn't healthy. And everyone's going to have to go through this process of trying to find younger players. I was talking to the legendary Andy Northey, like 2 seasons ago. He's like, we've got nothing else after this. Like, we've got these players, and then they're going to go, and I don't know what steps in.
Yeah.
And I think that's the most worrying part about local rugby is what happens when this last cohort of players go. Then what happens? Maybe they all get younger players, but they're not going to be quite as good, and there's just a different standard. And I reckon Broughton Park might have grasped that nettle a little bit earlier than everyone else because it is a young team.
That's interesting.
Fixtures for next week?
Yeah,
unless there's anything else. So Friday night we've got Ireland versus New Zealand.
Oh, tasty! No, Bowden Barrett or Cody Taylor for New Zealand.
Yeah, both. Well, we assume it's Cody Taylor definitely out.
Yeah, both definitely out.
Definitely out. I saw Barrett was out. Okay.
Ireland will win that one.
I fancy Ireland.
Yeah,
I fancy Ireland to do a better job of shutting down the individual brilliance of New Zealand
and to be more cohesive in attack. Most importantly,
yes, to do that as well.
Yeah.
Looking through so you mentioned before there's been a few cancelled games. I'm looking here at a list that includes Canada versus Chile, but
that's not happening.
That's not happening.
No, and I'm going to, well, as it stands, and I'm assuming I still am, going to Amsterdam this weekend where they were meant to be playing Zimbabwe. That game's now not happening. So it's another Tier 2 trip, which for rugby and the rugby isn't happening.
Isn't happening after our trip to Lisbon a few years ago.
Yeah.
Where Vlad invaded.
So I'll find somewhere to watch the rest of the rugby that is going on.
Which includes, of course, England versus Australia.
Yes.
Now England have to win this. The bit that's making headlines that I am interested to see is Joseph Suaalii, who is being compared to Israel Folau, who I've never seen play. I've seen a few of his highlights, including almost taking a man's head clean off his shoulders in a rugby league game.
It sounds like I'm going to like this guy.
You might not remember it, but you will have seen this challenge at the time because it was people were complaining that it wasn't a red card. It is one of the most blatant. Even in rugby league, it's a red card. Even in like 1990s rugby league, it was a red card. It was a horrific tackle that I rewatched today. But other than that, he's 6'5". He's 100 kg. So a similar size to Israel Folau.
Or Sam Burgess.
He's not quite. He's lighter than Sam Burgess.
Okay.
Sam Burgess is a heavier boy, but he's enormous and phenomenally talented.
Awesome.
Can play across the backs, wing, fullback, and centre in rugby league, but he can do what he wants. And he also played union as a youngster. It's only really the last 3-4 years that he's been playing professional rugby league in the NRL, but rugby league. So it'll be interesting. He's one of the very interesting stories from the Australian tour.
Okay.
Ahead of because he is.
But isn't this so Australia? Like the great hope is someone they got from rugby league somewhere.
It's exactly
like classic, isn't it?
Rugby league
exactly
and the one position they don't really need
because they've got so much talent.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a shame for Australia that rugby league don't scrimmage.
Yeah.
That's what they could do with.
You're not going to find a Will Skelton in rugby 150 kg.
Well, yeah, Willie Mason.
Willie Mason did
back in the day. Just thinking about this pattern. How far back can we go? So, Matt Rogers, Wendell Saylor, Lossie Takiri. I mean, they've been doing this for a long, long time.
Yeah.
It was
this playbook is almost a direct copy of the Israel Flow because it was a Lions year. They needed to generate interest. They brought in the most talented player who happens to have physical characteristics that are almost identical to Joseph's.
Hang on. Who does he pray to? Do we know this?
I don't know. I've not asked the question.
This might be a small problem.
He's, I think, Samoan descent.
Oh, God.
It's likely that he will be a Christian, but I don't actually know. So.
It can be interesting to see where he plays. If he plays, where he plays.
Yeah. If he plays, because he might not. He might just go in for experience and not actually play, or certainly not play in the England test. But I think we all expect England to win. I certainly hope England win.
Any changes, any major changes you'd make?
I'd like to see Trevor Davidson coming into the squad. I'd like to see a bit more impact on the back side of the bench. Obviously, Randall does have impact, but
just on Randall. When they say Randall in commentary, no problem. When they say Harry Randall, does anyone finish off a sentence carrying his candle? Or running his candle?
Well, that should be copyright Eddie Stevens Rugby Ranter Banter. Little Harry Randall running with his candle.
Yeah, Harry Randall running with his candle. That's what every time I said Harry Randall. Randall's fine. Yeah. Harry's fine.
Yeah. Other than that, I'd like to see a bit more just effective strike moves in the backs.
Yes.
That's what I want to see. Other than that, and the scrimmage did not fall apart late on.
What options has he got to, backs? I'm just going, the only backs that are in the squad that he could pick is Luke Northmore, Alex Lazowski,
Daly,
Finn Smith,
Stewart.
My feeling is you'll see better strike moves as the line out evolves because they'll work out, just like Leicester Tigers did. Leicester Tigers had a phenomenal strike rate from line out moves, but even they weren't precise enough. So when they get that precision, I think they'll look really, really good.
I hope so.
I hope you're right.
Yeah, I wouldn't change the starting team. I maybe have, I don't even know who. Freddie Stewart's come on at 12 and crash things through the middle for the last 20 minutes.
I tell you what, you're stretching. If you think Freddie Stewart's going to come on and do any, turn the game. Well, he might turn the game. He might turn the game.
Speaking about turning, that's the one thing I noticed again, that the Sage adverts are back with Brian Habana talking about his opponent being slow in the turn.
I noticed my opponent was slow to turn and exploited this data.
How much longer are we going to have to watch that?
I hate that advert.
England will win by 12.
I hope so. I want to see some strike moves.
Yes.
But on also, I do want to see some positives for Australia because I want to see a competitive Lions tour next year.
Yeah, fair.
I want to see a winning Lions tour for the Lions, but I also want to...
They unveiled their kit. It's a nice stash.
Is it? Other games?
Other games, yeah.
Italy play Argentina. That will be an interesting game.
That's pretty good, with a load of Italians or Argentinians, a load of Argentinians or Italians.
Yeah. Then France played Japan, which is the late kickoff.
Japan.
8 kick.
Are they going to play that somewhere cool, like
the Stade de France? Sadly,
okay. So no, then
probably because they got their cool games out in the Six Nations because Paris was being converted. Georgia played the All Blacks 15, the second string All Blacks team that beat Munster this week. So Georgia should provide sterner opposition for them. Portugal play the United States. Romania play Tonga. Kenya play Uruguay. Kenya play Uganda. Spain play Uruguay. That will be quite a cool game.
That's a pretty cool game.
Hong Kong host Brazil in Kowloon. Wales play Fiji. Hopefully a better showing. So Fiji, if they get all of their stars back...
They won't have all their stars. The squad they've named for this is not, is it not starless because the top 14's on.
Oh, God, that's a shame.
Yeah.
So, well, at least Wales get
They've got a few players coming back, but not many.
Wales managed to chalk up a win. And then Scotland, South Africa.
That's a tasty game to finish the weekend.
Yeah, although I think South Africa will win relatively comfortably.
Yeah.
South Africans are better than Scotland's South Africans. So give me South Africa.
They've got a few. Yeah. I can only agree. But I think Scotland have got a shout. They're a decent team, but yeah, the Boks will do it.
I did say, from what I saw of the game, Hastings, who I'm not always the biggest fan of Hastings.
Yeah, he looked really good.
He played great. Some lovely touches, nice distribution, nice offloads. Admittedly against a much weakened Fiji team. But Finn will be back, won't he?
Yep.
There you go.
Jobs are good.
Good. I hope you enjoyed my contribution to those predictions.
Loved it.
Contact eggchasers@gmail.com. Get more content at patreon.com/eggchasers and let the boys end.
Should we put something on?
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
She said, get out the chat room and clean my stretch. Feeling fine, so fresh.
The Glad Girl Group coming at you with a throwback jam. That was Glad Force Flex Drawstring Trash Bags featuring Pine Sol Original Scent. And that's better than all good. It's all Glad.
At Leidos, a brilliant mind is smart, but a brilliant team is smarter. A ship that finds enemy subs is smart, but an autonomous fleet, that's smarter. Defending against cyber attacks? Smart. Stopping attacks before they start? Smarter. And using AI tools is smart. But integrating trusted mission AI into your technology is smarter. We're not just making technology solutions in national security and health. We're making smart smarter. Leidos.